Naruto, the Fuinjutsu professor of the Ninja Academy. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176 Test. I'm afraid it's hard for Orochimaru to understand the brain circuit of a foodie. After all, he has never had any big requirements for food. The only things he likes to eat are eggs, apples, Kusanagi sword, and himself. At first glance, he can put anything in his mouth and is not picky at all. But Orochimaru finally became a little interested in this little girl named Xia Yan. No wonder the teacher recommended this child to be his apprentice. It turns out that he was not completely fooling him. Orochimaru thought so in his heart. But it's too early to draw a conclusion now. He decided to continue observing. Just like he was observing the changes of the toad on the table, then he still didn't turn his head and said in a hoarse voice, "Please wait a moment. If you feel bored, you can go to the bookshelf over there to find a book to read." "Oh." After Anko responded, she walked to the bookshelf that Orochimaru mentioned. Looking at the books filled with books on it, she couldn't help but make a sound of surprise. Because she has never read so many books since she was born. What should I read? Although Hondo had no interest in reading since she was a child, she decided to pick a book to give the strange uncle a good impression. What she didn't know at this time was that Orochimaru behind her was also paying attention to her choice and was curious about what book she would choose. Because this is actually part of the assessment. Introduction to Ninja Studies, Kojiki, Miko and Dog Demon, Hashirama and Madara. For Big and Wild Rose, little Hondo used her limited knowledge to identify the titles on the back of the book with difficulty. She felt dazzled and it was difficult to choose a book that could win the favor of the strange uncle. Just when she felt that her little brain was beginning to overload, the title of a book attracted her attention. The name of this book is so long that it looks very powerful. It's decided to be. Hondo stood on tiptoe and pulled out a not too thick book from a higher shelf. The name of the book is Guide to the Evaluation of Psychic Beast Girls, Snake Girl Volume. Just as she was holding the book and preparing to open it, a white shadow suddenly flashed, and the book was gently taken away before she could react. "Sorry, this book is too early for you." Orochimaru appeared in front of Hondo and said with a strange expression. Hondo subconsciously raised her hands and wanted to jump up to grab it, but under the gaze of Orochimaru's golden eyes, she finally put her hands back in embarrassment. But she couldn't help but mutter in a low voice, "I'm not a 3-year-old child anymore. I'm going to go to ninja school this year, and I'm old enough to fall in love." Orochimaru's mouth twitched slightly when he heard this, because he actually found this statement somewhat irrefutable. Should I discuss the phenomenon of early love among ninja school students with the teacher? He couldn't help but think so in his heart. At the same time, seeing Xiao Hondo's behavior, Orochimaru didn't know what memories were evoked, and his expression softened a little. After glancing at the bookshelf, he took out a thin picture book and handed it to Hondo, saying, "You just take a look at this one first, and wait a little longer." Orochimaru hadn't finished speaking when a strange sound suddenly came from the experimental table and interrupted his words. He handed the album to Hondo, and then stuck the Summoning Beast Girl Evaluation Guide, Snake Girl volume back onto the bookshelf, then turned around and walked back quickly. Hondo held the album in her hand, but couldn't help looking at the book on the bookshelf that Orochimaru didn't let her read. Her big eyes rolled around, and no one knew what crooked idea she was thinking. Orochimaru returned to the experimental table and saw that the toad was making a faint whine, and snake-like scales continued to grow on its body. Orochimaru looked accustomed to it, and began to pick up paper and pen to record the state of the toad, while muttering to himself, "It seems that the neutralizer is not very effective this time. Is there really no safe way to practice the sage mode? Can I only gamble my life?" Hondo was sitting at a table nearby, spreading the album on the table and flipping through it. The album is called The Story of Early Heroes, which tells the story of the great hero Wole and his wife Trisna working together to defeat the great demon Orochimaru. The author is anonymous. Although the story was obviously very simple and the pictures were very crude, it was more than enough to fool a child like Anko, and she read it with great interest. After finishing it quickly, she turned back to the beginning and started to read it again. However, before she finished reading it again, Orochimaru had already finished his research. With a sudden whine, the half-snake, half-toad monster on the table finally couldn't bear the drastic changes in its body and died. Orochimaru sighed and didn't deal with the body for the time being. Instead, he turned around and walked to Anko's side. Looking at her, who was still looking at the picture book seriously, his eyes were a little complicated. In fact, he didn't have much resistance to accepting Anka was his apprentice. After all, with the teacher's recommendation, it means that there is no problem with the qualifications of this little girl. As long as she doesn't die young, she can at least become an elite among the genin under his guidance. And from her performance just now, her personality also reminded him of his former disciple, and there was no big problem in their compatibility. Finally, and most importantly, Red Bean's father, Mitarashi Shisho, who was a capable subordinate of the teacher, died in an important mission not long ago. So the small ninja clan of Mitarashi is now left with only Red Bean and her mother, an orphan and a widow. That's why the teacher suggested that he take this child as a disciple so early, in order to use this title to provide them with protection and reduce the covetousness of others. So even if it's just on the surface, he doesn't mind taking this child as a disciple. It's just that everyone is afraid of comparing goods. After missing out on the perfect disciple Yushin Xia Yan, Red Bean, who was not bad, made him a little unmotivated. Not to mention that if he took Xia Yan as his apprentice, he could immediately provide him with a lot of help, and at Red Bean's current age, it would take at least 5 years before he could barely help him. Considering the energy and resources invested, he decided that he still had to conduct more tests to decide the future training policy for this child, whether to let him go or to raise him intensively, in a remote grove at Konoha. Hidden in the canopy of a lush tree was a somewhat crudely built treehouse. In the treehouse, Ashuma, Obito, and Ebisu were gathered together, looking very serious. Ahem. Ashuma cleared his throat and said, "Then, the 5th Shuriken Squadron operation meeting officially begins. This time, I, the captain, will preside over the meeting." Chapter 177 Event Clap, 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 clap. In the treehouse, after Ashuma announced the start of the meeting, Obito and Ebisu both clapped their hands vigorously in coordination. Unfortunately, there were only 2 of them, so the applause sounded a little faint to Ashuma's ears. "By the way, where are the other people in the group?" Ashuma couldn't help asking. Rin and Kurone made an appointment to go shopping today. Obito said with regret, "I wanted to go too, but Kurone refused." As for Kai, Obito scratched his head. "He's been sneaking around lately. Every time I look for him, he's nowhere to be found. I don't know where he went." Ebisu, who was standing by, raised his eyebrows when he heard this, and couldn't help but think of the scene where he seemed to have just seen Kai walking out of Kakashi's house 2 days ago. He even remembered that Kai looked refreshed at the time, while Kakashi could see that he was a little depressed even through his mask. After thinking about it, Ebisu decided not to tell this information. "How can you repair it?" After hearing where the other team members were going, Ashuma patted the wooden table in front of him with a dissatisfied look on his face. "These guys are too disorganized and undisciplined. As members of our Shuriken team, how can you miss such an important meeting?" "That," Ebisu said hesitantly, "maybe it's because we have been on vacation for a few days, and we have already held 4 meetings. Everyone is a little tired of it." "Ebisu, what are you talking about?" Ashuma's eyes widened. "My father said that incidents are not resolved on the spot, but in the conference room. So even if he is the strongest Hokage, he still holds meetings every day. Although I don't quite understand the reason, we will never go wrong if we follow suit." "What? Hokage actually said such a thing?" Ebisu said, holding up his sunglasses that slid down in surprise. "It suddenly makes sense when you say that." As he said that, he took out a notebook and began to record the famous sayings of Hokage. Ebisu's parents were both examples of civilians who became ninjas and changed their own destiny through learning. Therefore, he was influenced by what he saw and heard since he was a child, and he also had a strong fanaticism for Konoha and the Hokage who gave them this opportunity. Therefore, when he heard Ashuma's words, his attitude changed 180 degrees. Obito on the side looked at Ashuma and Ebisu in silence. Because he always felt that Ashuma seemed to have mastered the trick to deal with Ebisu. And seeing Ebisu so pious, Ashuma was embarrassed to say that he actually couldn't remember clearly whether he had said the opposite of his father's words, but after thinking about it, he was too lazy to get entangled and decided to continue the meeting. "Forget it, since other people have something to do, there is nothing we can do. Let's ignore them and get straight to the topic of today's meeting." Then he looked at Obito and Ebisu, and said in a nostalgic tone, "As everyone knows, our Shuriken team has always been a symbol of peace in Konoha. Since its establishment, it has made great contributions to the stability of Konoha." Obito nodded in deep understanding. Ashuma's words lost the aura of the Hokage, and Ebisu, whose IQ had regained its high ground, was speechless. I remember that we seemed to have been established for less than a week, but before he finished speaking, he was glared at by the other two and held back the rest of his words. Well, just be happy with you two. Ahem, Ashuma cleared his throat and continued. For example, a few days ago, our team's blue ninja Obito helped a lost old lady get home. Obito couldn't help but raise his chin high, his little face was very proud. And Ebisu was complaining in his heart. Isn't this kind of thing what Obito usually does? How can it be considered the credit of our team? For example, the day before yesterday, we found Uncle Tucker's missing puppy. That's true, but we were also scolded by the genin who received this task. Ebisu continued to complain in his heart. The most amazing thing was the day before yesterday, when we worked together to defeat the bully ninja cat that was rampant in Konoha and had it sterilized. Ebisu's face became even darker. Because although what Ashuma said was true, the price was that when he walked on the street these 2 days, there were always many wild cats staring at him, and their eyes were focused on that indescribable part. He felt bad because he was always stared at by these crotch-staring cats. Ashuma didn't care about Ebisu's strangeness, and then sighed. After our unremitting efforts, the village has finally returned to its former stability. There is no need for us to take action anymore. So I called everyone here today to work out the team's future action plan together. Ebisu felt a little helpless when he heard this. Because he finally understood what Ashuma wanted to express by going around in such a big circle. I'm so bored, is there any fun activity suitable for our team to do? Although he also understood Ashuma's idea. After all, after a few days of team activities, everyone has discovered that although the suits given to them by teacher Xia Yan are very powerful, they seem to have no use for them. They cannot leave Konoha, and they can't find many things in the village that need these suits. As the saying goes, if you hold a hammer in your hand, everything looks like a nail. They got the suits after a semester of hard work, so of course they want to make good use of them. But even if Ashuma suddenly said this, Obito and Ebisu didn't have any good ideas for a while. In the end, Ashuma took the lead and said, "Then let me start to throw bricks and jade." He suddenly looked at Obito and said slowly, "Obito, how about you turn evil?" Huh. Obito was confused. Although he knew what the so-called evil and whitewashing meant after being influenced by teacher Xia Yan's story projection, he didn't understand why Ashuma wanted him to turn evil for no reason. Ashuma explained seriously. Actually, after careful consideration, I found out. The biggest reason why our Shuriken team has nothing to do is that there is no equal enemy. So as long as you, Obito, turn evil, we will have something to do during this holiday. Please don't let me turn evil just to kill time. Obito couldn't help but complain. Ashuma put his hands together and begged. What does it matter? The teacher said that characters who turn evil and then whitewash are particularly popular. Obito, don't you want to hear him say Obito is the most handsome? Obito was attracted by the scene described by Ashuma and almost agreed. But he hesitated for a moment and said, "Then why don't you turn evil, Ashuma? Don't you want to be told that by Red?" Ashuma spread his hands and said, "I want to, but the plot of the son of a big shot turning evil is too cliché. Unlike Obito, you're originally a loser and often help the elderly. Only when you turn evil can you have an impact." And the teacher also said, "Blackening is 3 times stronger. Now Kakashi has joined the research team. If you don't become stronger quickly, Obito, you'll be abandoned by Kakashi soon." Obito was convinced by Ashuma's well-reasoned and carrot-and-stick approach, but he was still a little entangled in his heart. Then, when can I be whitewashed? Obito hesitated. Ashuma crossed his arms, tilted his head and thought for a while, then said, "In order to maximize the effect of whitewashing, it should be before death. Don't prepare a lunchbox for me to kill time." Obito pretended to be angry and rushed towards Ashuma. The two of them wrestled with each other. Ebisu looked at the childish behavior of the two and spread his hands helplessly. The two wrestled for a while, but neither could do anything to the other, so they had to shake hands and make peace, lying on the wooden floor and breathing slightly. Ashuma looked at the roof with many leaks of light and the wooden boards were not nailed well, and sighed. Why is the village so boring? There is not a single incident." And just as Ashuma sighed like that, not far from the treehouse, a thrilling chase was going on. In the dense forest, a small figure was stumbling forward in a hurry. It can be seen that the main body of this figure is the dusty and embarrassed Miter Shianto. She was running wildly in the dense forest with her hands and feet, and she turned her head to look behind her with a nervous expression from time to time. And every time she looked back, her expression would become more desperate. Boom. Boom. The sound of trees being broken in half continued to sound. Behind Hondo, a giant snake at least as thick as a manhole cover was chasing her. The huge snake rushed through the dense forest, smashing the trees along the way into pieces, which was quite scary. Hondo, who was still running wildly, adjusted her breathing, took a deep breath, and shouted with all her strength, "Is there anyone? Can anyone save me?" Hondo finally knew what it meant to be overjoyed and then sad. It was obvious that she had finally become a weird uncle, oh no, a disciple teacher or Okimura, and she would have endless red bean soup and meatballs in the future. I didn't expect that she had just said goodbye to her teacher and left the research institute not far away, but she was attacked by this giant snake behind her for no reason. Why was she so unlucky? And why was the teacher's research institute built in such a remote grove, without even finding someone to ask for help? Little Hondo shouted for help for a long time, but no one came to rescue her, and she gradually began to despair. So she was not careful and tripped by a protruding tree root on the ground, and fell heavily to the ground. It's over. In an instant, such a thought flashed through Hondo's mind, and then a series of scenes began to emerge in her mind. Dad, Mom, red bean soup, meatballs, mokai, tfuku, doraki, yokan. Little Hondo didn't quite understand the meaning of death, but just thinking that she might not be able to eat those delicious things in the future, she couldn't help but drool in fear. At the same time, a huge drop of saliva also dripped behind her, corroding the ground with a sizzling sound. Hondo turned over and saw that the giant snake behind her had already appeared behind her, looking down at her with its big red eyes like lanterns, and saliva was also flowing down like her. It's just that she was craving those sweets, while the giant snake was craving her. Argh! Hondo's high decibel howl sounded again in the dense forest. Chapter 178. Team appearance. This little devil is so noisy when he is startled. The giant snake, who was looking down at Red Bean, was complaining in his heart. If I had known earlier, I should not have coveted the reward of 648 toads from Okimura and helped him test this little devil, and I heard from Uncle Snape that although human devils are small, they taste very good. Otherwise, the giant snake immediately shook his head and gave up his bold idea. After all, Okimura is not someone to be trifled with. However, looking at the plump red bean, the giant snake's saliva kept flowing down. By the way, Okimura just said that he couldn't really hurt this little devil, so I won't eat her, but I'll just lick her to taste it. The giant snake was proud of his own intelligence, and then once again cast a fiery gaze at Red Bean under his shadow, with his tongue stretched out. Just one bite, really? Just one lick? Looking at the red bean that had been marinated with fear, the giant snake's eyes became redder and redder, and he had begun to forget the agreement with Okimura. Never mind. At most, he would just hide from Okimura in the future. The next moment, his vertical pupils suddenly contracted, and his body was completely dominated by instinct. He opened his bloody mouth and pounced on the already sluggish Red Bean. However, at this moment, three short figures suddenly rushed out from the dense tree canopy on the side. They were Obito, Ashuma and Ebisu. Ashuma and Ebisu waved their ninja swords emitting yellow light in their hands, and stabbed them into the ground with force at the moment of landing, and shouted loudly, "Shuriken ninja technique! Earth flowing wall technique!" X2 then two underdeveloped earth walls rose from the ground, blocking the giant snake and Red Bean. At the same time, in the tree canopy not far away, a pair of golden vertical pupils flashed a slightly curious light. Boom! Boom! Obviously, the two crudely made earth walls could not withstand the attack of the giant snake, and they were smashed into pieces in less than 2 seconds. But it was enough. Because taking advantage of this opportunity, Obito had already rushed to Red Bean at a very fast speed, picked her up and held her in his arms, then quickly jumped to the side, barely avoiding the flying dirt and the bloody mouth that followed. The giant snake did not expect that the earth wall that suddenly appeared in front of it was so fragile. It rushed too far and bit its teeth tightly on the trunk of a big tree, and it was difficult to pull it out for a while. Obito, take advantage of now. At Ashuma's urging, Obito held Red Bean and joined them. The three of them used the trunk to gain leverage and jumped onto the branches and began to retreat quickly. After a while, the three of them stopped at their secret base and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Are you okay? Are you feeling uncomfortable? After Obito put Red Bean down, he raised his hand in front of Red Bean, who looked dazed, with some worry. At this time, Red Bean finally came to her senses and her eyes regained their brilliance. I'm fine. She responded subconsciously, then began to recall what she had just experienced. She looked at Obito and Ashuma, who were not much older than her, and exclaimed, "You guys are so awesome, thank you." Of course. Ashuma said a little arrogantly, and then showed off the ninja sword in his hand. But the biggest contributor is the ninja sword the teacher Xia Yan gave us. I didn't expect that the built-in shuriken ninjutsu function in it is so useful. Right, Ebisu. However, Ebisu still looked frightened. Obviously, although he had just followed Ashuma and Obito, he was still very scared when he thought about it now. He reminded nervously, "Okay, now is not the time to talk about this. It's not safe here yet. Let's run quickly. We have to inform the adults that there is such a big snake here." Ashuma's eyes widened when he heard it. "Ebisu, what are you talking about? Isn't this the event we have been waiting for a long time?" He waved the ninja sword and said, "As long as we can defeat that big snake, the whole village will know the reputation of our shuriken team. And as long as we have the ninja sword given by the teacher, isn't it easy to deal with a snake? But, I always feel that it's a bit weird that this snake appears here." Ebisu wanted to say more, but was interrupted by Ashuma's hand. He pointed to the rolling dust that was constantly approaching them in the depths of the dense forest and said, "It seems that even if we want to run, it's not that easy." Ebisu looked at the looming snake shadow in the dust, approaching at high speed. His face became more and more green, and his legs were shaking. However, as an excellent student, he also knew that with the giant snake's amazing speed, running away at this time might be the most dangerous option. And although he usually let Ashuma and Obito make the decision, at critical moments, as the oldest member, he must take on his own responsibilities. Thinking of this, his legs gradually stopped shaking. And Obito told Anko, "You can hide here for the time being. Don't worry, we will be back soon." After saying that, he gave Anko a thumbs up. However, this obviously could not dispel Anko's worries. In her worried eyes, Obito immediately joined the other two and nodded to each other. The three walked out of the treehouse and came to a thick branch. They looked at the giant snake that was getting bigger and bigger in their field of vision and was still rushing towards them. At the same time, they raised the ninja sword with their right hand, and took out a shuriken of different colors with their left hand and pressed the mechanism in it. Then Might Dai's passionate narration began to sound. Red ninja shuriken. Blue ninja shuriken. Yellow ninja shuriken. The three then installed the shuriken on the ninja sword's katana, pressed the change button on the blade, and then turned the shuriken to rotate at high speed. Shuriken transformation. X3 The three shouted loudly. Ninja, 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 ninja. Brainwashing music sounded, and a glare-like light pollution surrounded them, making it difficult to see clearly. Then, under this blinding RGB light, a red figure jumped out, somersaulted in the air for 2.5 weeks, and landed steadily on his knees. The lowered head suddenly raised, and the red warrior said coldly, "Violent clear sky, red ninja." Then another blue figure jumped out, and also landed steadily on his knees. Roaring Yakumo, blue ninja. Finally, a yellow figure landed. Shining like Neji, yellow ninja. The three stood up at the same time, and the red ninja said, "As a ninja, I don't endure." Finally, the three of them posed in what they thought was the coolest pose and said in unison, "Shuriken Squadron, ninja." Boom. A projection of an explosion exploded behind them. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 179 Tactics. Silence. After the explosion, the dense forest was silent for a while, because all the audience were confused by Ashuma and his fancy transformations, and they didn't know how to react. So handsome. After a lot of hesitation, the little red bean who was peeking through the window of the treehouse finally came to this conclusion. As for how many beauty filters for the savior were mixed in this conclusion, it is unknown. However, after coming to the conclusion, it seemed as if the balance in her heart had tilted, and Red Bean's eyes began to sparkle. The more she looked, the more she felt that the battle clothes worn by Obito and his friends were so cool. Poor kid, she didn't know that her aesthetics had begun to distort, and the mysterious man who had been hiding in the dark, well, it was actually Futari. No, it was Orochimaru. After watching Ashuma and his friends transform, he was also stunned for a while. Because it was really hard for him to determine whether there was something wrong with the aesthetics of these children or his own aesthetics were out of date. Why do children nowadays fight so fancy? Orochimaru quickly came to his senses and smiled with interest. He remembered that his teacher seemed to have said that Ashuma had recently joined Xia Yan's sealing technique research group and had made great progress, which made his teacher feel relieved. Combined with the light effect and explosion that should have been created by the projection technique, it was not difficult for Orochimaru to guess that the ninja sword and the strange costume should be Xia Yan's work. The problem is this just a toy made by Xia Yan for the children? Thinking of the strange earth flow all that Ashuma and another child had just performed, Orochimaru couldn't help but lick his lips with his long tongue, and his golden eyes exuded a light of curiosity. It's interesting, originally, his trial of Red Bean this time was to see how she would react at the critical moment of life and death. However, after Ashuma and the other three little guys came out to disrupt the situation, this trial lost its meaning. In addition, the Juda guy seemed to be a little out of control, so Orochimaru was originally ready to end this trial. But now, out of curiosity about Xia Yan's new invention, he decided to continue observing secretly. Let me see what these three ninja school students can do with the help of Xia Yan's invention, Orochimaru muttered to himself, and at the same time, he glanced at an empty tree branch not far away without leaving a trace, revealing a meaningful smile. The giant snake named Ju was also in a state of confusion at this time, although no one could see it. In fact, it had already arrived not far in front of Ashuma and the others just now, but it was frightened by their overly fancy transformation scenes that were obviously ninjas, and for a while it did not dare to launch an attack. However, after Ashuma and the others finished calling their names, without the blessing of those colorful special effects, Ju gradually reacted. After all, what was in front of him was just three human kids in strange costumes. By the way, Orochimaru only said that we can't hurt the purple-haired brat, but not these three. Xia Yan, who felt that he had found a bug, began to drool again, making a sizzling sound on the ground. Compared with the fear of unknown things, the desire for food once again prevailed. Which one should we start with first? It looked back and forth with its two big lantern-like eyes at the three people who were also looking up at it. Really, staring at each other. Too troublesome. Since we can't decide, just swallow them all together. Xia Yan, who could no longer suppress his instinct, decided to give up thinking, opened his bloody mouth, and quickly pounced on the three people. Finally here. The three people had already discussed how to deal with the attack of the snake, but found that the other party was actually motionless and just stared at them, so that they didn't know whether to change the plan for a while. Now seeing it start to attack them, everyone was relieved. It's here, everyone act according to the plan. Obito reminded. Hey, why are you giving orders, Obito? Ashuma yelled, remember, I'm the captain. Ebisu resisted the urge to roll his eyes, feeling nervous and helpless. Why were these two guys still entangled in such a problem in this situation? What is the heart made of? Soon, the giant snake had smashed the trees along the road and rushed to them, and the three of them quickly became serious. They raised the ninja sword again, each of them embedded a yellow shuriken in the katana on the other side of the ninja sword, and then injected their own chakra into the ninja sword through the hilt. With the injection of chakra, the three yellow shurikens embedded in the katana began to rotate at high speed. Just when the giant snake came not far in front of them and was about to swallow them up, the three of them simultaneously thrust their ninja swords into the ground and shouted in unison. Shuriken ninjutsu earth-style triple earth flowing wall technique. Then 1, 2, and 3 earth walls rose up from the ground in front of them, just blocking the giant snake's attack. Boom. The next moment, the bloody mouth that pounced on the food collided head-on with the first earth wall, smashing it into pieces. Boom. Boom. Huge roars sounded one after another, and for a moment, gravel flew and dust rose. Obviously, just like before, these earth walls could not stop the giant snake's impact at all, and were smashed one after another by it. Even with the earth wall created by Obito, it only delayed the giant snake's breakthrough by less than a second. The 10 snakes that broke through the earth wall saw the panic movements of the 3 human cubs, and a hint of ridicule flashed in their eyes. Without thinking too much, it opened its mouth and swallowed them in one gulp. The 10 snakes, who had easily completed the hunt, raised their upper bodies high, with a human-like puzzled look in their eyes. Why do I always feel that it's the same as not eating? Although the 3 little ghosts don't have much meat, it's impossible that they don't have any taste at all, right? Could it be that I was too impatient and swallowed them too quickly? It's a pity that I didn't ask Uncle Wanshi about the correct way to eat human cubs, and wasted such good ingredients. Just as the 10 snakes fell into deep thought, it didn't notice that the 3 little things it thought it had swallowed had sneaked to the vicinity of its body that was supported on the ground. Obviously, the human cubs that the giant snake thought it had swallowed were actually just the projections they left behind. It turned out that in their plan, the 3 earth walls and their projections were actually just bait to attract the attention of the giant snake. like a red cloth waved by a bullfighter. While the giant snake was ramming the earth wall like a bull, they had already quietly slipped away from the side. They came to the snake and nodded to each other, then injected chakra into the ninja sword and stuck it into the ground. The yellow shuriken began to spin again. Shuriken ninjutsu, earth escape, hold fallen technique. The three whispered. The next moment, the ground under the snake began to collapse and sink rapidly. Under the joint spell of the three people, a large hole was formed, and the giant snake lost its balance and fell into it. Hiss. What's going on? The 10 snakes, who were trying to savor the taste of the 3 little ghosts and bragging about them when they returned, were frightened by the sudden change and let out a surprised roar. It turned its head and found that the 3 people who thought they were in its stomach were actually under it. Despicable humans. At this time, it didn't know that it had been deceived by them. After a roar, the 10 snakes began to wriggle and struggle violently, trying to get out. Compared to its size, the pit created by the 3 people together is not small, but it is still not enough to completely subdue it. It will soon be freed from the trap. However, the 3 people had expected this situation, so their tactics are not over yet. Obito and Debisu suddenly jumped into the air, pressed the buttons of their battlesuits belts at the same time, and then thrust their hips forward. Puff. Puff, pools of white and thick mucus spurted out from their belts and poured into the pit. Shuriken Ninja Tool Mucus Launcher. Before the giant snake could react, the mucus had solidified quickly, making it more difficult for the giant snake to struggle. Now, Ashuma. The two turned around and shouted as they landed. Okay, watch me. Ashuma, who was holding his breath not far away, responded, and then embedded the red shuriken into the katana of the ninja sword. With the infusion of fire chakra, the red shuriken began to rotate at high speed, making a buzzing sound. The next moment, a ball of flame began to emerge from the root of the sword, and then the entire blade was burning. Then, surprisingly, the ordinary flame turned into a strange purple. Shuriken ninjutsu fire-style dark brush. Ashuma shouted, and at the same time swung the ninja sword from bottom to top. The burning blade passed across the ground, and then the purple flame on it flew along the ground at high speed to the hole, landing on the white mucus that Obito and the others had just sprayed. The fire flashed away, as if it was extinguished by the mucus, but in the next moment, all the mucus actually burned violently. Boom. The entire hole instantly turned into a purple sea of fire. At the same time, the giant snake's shrill roar resounded throughout the forest. Although his summoning beast was severely injured, Orochimura, who had been watching not far away, was completely like a normal person, and even smiled approvingly. Although Xia Yan's invention was the key to these students who are still ninja school students being able to torment Jisaku like this, as executors, their performance was still remarkable. It seems that Xia Yan's level of selecting and training students is also good. Orochimura secretly praised him in his heart, and then focused on the 3 people's ninja swords. Sure enough, the ninja swords in their hands were not just toys used to change clothes. Chapter 180 Crisis. Orochimura was able to draw this conclusion because he finally saw the movements of Ashuma and the others when they performed the ninjutsu. As expected, there was no hand seal. No hand seal ninjutsu. No, it should be called room ninjutsu. Orochimura sighed again in his heart. In fact, he had seen this so-called room ninjutsu before. After all, the game consoles that can be seen everywhere in the Kinen Tavern are the projection techniques of the room ninjutsu version. No matter who it is, as long as chakra is injected, the machine can show a real projection. There is no doubt that if this technology can be popularized, it will greatly improve the lower limit of ordinary ninjas. So he gave a high evaluation of Xia Yan's interesting idea. And Danzo even coerced and lured him to crack the game console for this technology. It's a pity that it is said that Danzo was tricked by Xia Yan later. It seems that he is still busy rebuilding the root base recently, so the matter was left unresolved. But Orochimura didn't regret it too much at the time. Because he also had a deep knowledge of sealing techniques, he knew how many difficulties would be encountered if he wanted to completely transform a ninjutsu into the form of runes. He originally thought that the projection technique that combined the D-level transformation technique and the clone technique was already the limit of what Xia Yan could fully transform into runes. So although he had a high opinion of Xia Yan's research direction, he was not very interested in learning it for the time being. Because even if he learned what Xia Yan had mastered now, it would take a lot of time to continue to develop in this direction, and there was no guarantee that this path would be feasible. In short, the risk was too high and the gain would not outweigh the loss. However, his original idea seemed to be negated by the room ninjutsu that Ashuma and the others had just performed. The earth flow wall, the falling hole technique, and the strange fire escape ninjutsu that Ashuma used at the end, that is to say, at least 3 sea level and above ninjutsu have been fully transformed into rooms by Xia Yan. With such a progress, even if Orochimaru himself went all out, he didn't think he could do it in a short time. Was it developed by Xia Yan before, or was it with the help of Mito-sama? However, there is no doubt that although these room ninjutsu are still inferior to the sealed version of ninjutsu in terms of effect, they are fully sufficient for use in actual combat. The Jewel Snake, who was still screaming at this time, is the best proof. So this road has been opened. And Orochimaru's evaluation of Xia Yan has also risen several levels. From a promising junior, he has become a pioneer of a new road, an existence that is enough to communicate with him. So Orochimaru once again looked at the empty tree branch not far away and smiled. Xia Yan, am I so scary that you don't even want to come out to see me? The next moment, a white-haired young man who was scratching his head and smiling bitterly gradually emerged in the air on the branch he was looking at. It was Xia Yan. Lord Orochimaru, you're too kind. Xia Yan spread his hands and said, I was just testing my newly invented optical camouflage technique to see if it can work on you, Lord Orochimaru. But it seems that this trick still has a lot of room for improvement. Optical camouflage technique, Orochimaru licked his tongue and said, I'm really jealous of your ability to develop ninjutsu, Lord Xia Yan. It's comparable to the second Hokage. I want to perform a craniotomy on you to see what's inside. Xia Yan felt a chill down his spine when he heard that, and forced a smile. Lord Orochimaru, you're too kind. How can I compare to Lord Tobirama? Orochimaru chuckled a few times, then asked curiously. So, Lord Xia Yan, what's the matter with Ashuma's purple flame? Could it be that just like the change in the properties of your phone, have you developed a special change in the properties of fire escape? Lord Orochimaru, why do you make this sound so easy? Xia Yan said speechlessly. As for the purple flame, actually, this is just a special effect that Ashuma asked me to make. Special effect. Although it was the first time he heard this word, Orochimaru quickly understood its meaning, and his expression became particularly strange. I still don't quite understand the thoughts of young people nowadays. While Xia Yan and Orochimaru were watching the show and chatting, the situation began to change. In the fire pit in the middle of the open space, the 10 snakes were still struggling frantically, and at the same time, they made terrible screams, which was a bit creepy. Seeing that the big bad snake that had chased her to nowhere just now was suddenly roasted in a pit by Obito and his men, the little red bean in the treehouse showed an unbelievable expression, then her saliva began to flow again. Because of the smell of the burning big bad snake, Red Bean was actually a little hungry. At the same time, she thought that the victory was decided, and she had forgotten Obito's instructions just now. She ran out of the treehouse and made faces at the giant snake that was about to turn into charcoal roasted snake meat, venting her frustration just now. Unexpectedly, at this moment, the mucus that was gradually burning out began to crack and disintegrate. The giant snake struggled hard and actually escaped from the hole. The next moment, its red vertical pupils glared at the 3 people not far away with hatred, and the snake body swung violently, and the snake's tail swept towards them with the force of thunder. Be careful. The 3 people who originally thought that the battle had entered garbage time and were just waiting for the giant snake to be burned to death were also surprised that the giant snake escaped. Seeing the giant snake's angry blow sweeping across, the 3 people hurriedly jumped up to avoid it. Fortunately, they all barely avoided the giant snake's tail. However, they still missed a point. After they jumped up to avoid the giant snake's tail, it hit the trunk of the big tree where their tree house was located. Boom! The tree shook violently. Hondo, who had already run out of the tree house and was standing on that branch, staggered in the shaking, and soon lost her footing and fell from the tree. Ah! Hondo screamed sharply again. Oh no! Ashuma and the other 2 who were still in the air saw this and cried out in their hearts that it was not good. At this moment, Ebisu, who was closest to Red Bean, just jumped onto the trunk of a big tree. He made up his mind, kicked the trunk hard, and pounced on Red Bean in mid-air. Then, under the nervous gaze of Obito and Ashuma, Ebisu caught Red Bean in the air with perfect timing. Well done, Ebisu. Ashuma and Obito couldn't help but cheer. However, the next moment their expressions became terrified again. Because they saw that in front of the direction where Ebisu jumped, 2 huge scarlet vertical pupils appeared. Chapter 181 Sleeping Ebisu. The constant severe pain from the severely burned abdomen reminded it repeatedly that if it had broken free a little later, it might not have been able to leave the fire pit alive. Because in such severe pain, it couldn't even concentrate on cancelling the summoning and returning to the Raichi cave to save its life. The possibility that he might die in the most abject way made the proud tent snake, who always thought he was at the top of the food chain, feel great fear. For a moment, he even recalled the fear that many elders showed towards weak creatures like humans. But this thought did not last long. Unwilling to admit this thought, it soon turned the fear of death into firewood of hatred, making the anger in its heart burn more and more fiercely. It hated these three brats who came out inexplicably to mess up and almost took his life, hated the purple-haired brat who didn't play a good show at it, and even hated the Orochimaru who summoned him. The hatred filled his heart and made him forget the agreement with Orochimaru. He only wanted to swallow all the little ghosts into his stomach to vent his hatred. So when he saw Ebisu and Red Bean flying towards him, he was filled with the pleasure of revenge. "Let's start with you two little ghosts." Chuizahi roared in his heart, and at the same time, he suddenly opened his huge mouth with two sharp fangs and bit the two people flying towards him. At this time, Obito and Ashuma found a foothold on the nearby trees. They just stood firm and had no time to rescue Ebisu. Seeing that Ebisu was about to be swallowed by the hateful giant snake, they both shouted in despair, "Ebisu!" Even Orochimaru, who was eating melons and watching the show on the side, couldn't help but glance at Xia Yan with his peripheral vision. Seeing that he was still unmoved, Orochimaru was a little surprised. "Why are you still not ready to attack at this time? Is there any backup plan on that strange equipment, or is Xia Yan so confident in that student?" Orochimaru showed curiosity again, completely forgetting that his newly accepted disciple was also about to die in Shekau. However, what he didn't know was that Xia Yan beside him was actually a little panicked. Because at this time, the interface in his field of vision was still showing a helpless prompt. Bluey Tooth is connecting, back on the field, seeing that Ebisu and Hondo were about to die in Shekau, but as the focus of everyone, Ebisu still didn't move, and continued to hold Hondo and flew towards the bloody mouth without hesitation. This calm appearance also gave Hondo in his arms a little hope. Could it be that this big brother has any tricks to get out of the predicament? As if grasping the last straw, Hondo hugged the other tightly in order not to hinder the big brother's actions later. However, after she leaned her head over, she heard with horror the slight snoring coming from under the mask of the big brother. "It's over. This time it's really over." It turns out that the big brother didn't move just now not because he had any plan, but because he had fainted a long time ago. It seems that the leap to save Hondo just now is the result of Ebisu's extraordinary performance. And his performance at this time is normal. Hondo, who was finally completely desperate, took a deep breath again, and then let out the last and biggest scream of her life. Moreover, the sphere was still expanding rapidly, and instantly became a huge sphere with a diameter of at least 3 meters. What is that? Everyone who was watching this scene had such questions in their hearts. But before everyone had time to think about it, they saw that the huge sphere began to separate from the belt. Then Ebisu, who was still in the air, twisted his body with an exaggerated amplitude and kicked the sphere into the mouth of the giant snake that was still biting it regardless. Bang! A huge explosion suddenly sounded in the woods. Just like piercing a balloon filled with air with a needle, the huge sphere exploded as soon as it touched the sharp fangs of the giant snake. The wind pressure of the explosion spread in all directions, blowing the surrounding thick branches all over the place, and even making a sound of being overwhelmed. At the same time, a large piece of the spherical fragments directly covered the giant snake's face, blinding its eyes for a while. Ebisu, who was not far from the center of the explosion, had already embedded a white shuriken into his ninja sword, stretched out his hand in front of his body to unfold a white circular barrier as a buffer, and flew quickly in the opposite direction of the giant snake along the blast. However, the crisis of the two did not end there. They were still in a high-speed flying state, and they were about to hit the thick trees in front of them again. Fortunately, Ebisu stretched out his hand again, unfolded a white barrier in front of him, and bounced back and forth between the trees like a three-dimensional pinball, and then gradually reduced the speed, and finally successfully landed steadily. After landing, Ebisu put down the dumbfounded red bean, and then stood there motionless, not knowing what he was doing. At this time, Obito and Ashuma rushed over happily. "Ebisu, you hid so deeply. I didn't expect that the barrier shuriken has been used so skillfully by you." Ashuma, who ran from behind Ebisu, said excitedly, and at the same time stretched out his hand and patted Ebisu on the shoulder. Who would have thought that with this neither light nor heavy slab, Ebisu, who had just shown his might, was actually knocked to the ground by him. The next moment, even his battle suit was removed. What the hell, what's going on? Ashuma was immediately confused, staring blankly at his raised right hand, and began to wonder if he had awakened some kind of primordial power. Chapter 182 Mystery. Just when Ashuma began to suspect that he might not be his biological child, Obito, who followed closely behind, had already leaned over to check on Ebisu. Seeing that Ebisu was breathing steadily and even snoring slightly, he smiled and said, "It seems that Ebisu was fine. He probably just fainted due to excessive chakra consumption." Ashuma was relieved to hear that, and then he was a little tearful. He didn't expect that the usually timid Ebisu would burst out with such great potential in order to save this little sister, and even squeeze his body to this extent. What made him cry the most was that Ebisu even ran out of chakra, but he still maintained a standing posture, as if he was going to continue to fight side by side with them. This guy, Ashuma couldn't help but half kneel beside Ebisu, who was lying on the ground, and patted his shoulder. "Ebisu, my friend, you are the real hero." However, what Ashuma didn't know was that the one who actually performed those operations just now was not Ebisu, who was lying on the ground. On the treetop not far away, Xia Yan was looking at the interface showing the connection interruption in front of him, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. I didn't expect Ebisu to run out of power so quickly. No, he ran out of chakra. I wanted to show off my skills next and help him pretend to be a big one. Yes, in fact, the operations that Ebisu just performed were performed by Xia Yan remotely controlling his body. This is actually a new technique developed by Xia Yan based on the idea of controlling shadow clones with the shadow puppet technique and the action copying function of the tights. It can be regarded as a hidden function built into the student battle suit. But he didn't expect it to come in handy so soon. However, Xia Yan seemed to be not very satisfied with this function. It seems that I have to add a chakra amount display bar to this technique in the future to avoid running out of power halfway. Xia Yan, who once again recalled the fear of being dominated by the battery of his mobile phone in his previous life, muttered to himself. But then again, this technique seems to have not been named yet. Originally, this technique was based on the principle of the shadow puppet technique, and uses the receivers in the battle suits to control the students' bodies, so it is most appropriate to call it the human puppet technique. It's a pity that this name has been registered by someone else. Then what should I call it? Xia Yan stroked his chin and fell into deep thought. Oh, let's call it the large figure technique. But before Xia Yan could make a decision, Orochimaru interrupted his thoughts. Hehe, I didn't expect that besides the sealing technique, Xia Yan is also so good at teaching students. Orochimaru praised. Although he relied on the power of the equipment, the child was able to calmly make the most correct judgment in such an emergency. This ability to adapt to circumstances is still very commendable. You are too kind, Lord Orochimaru. Xia Yan said modestly. Ebisu is still far behind. It is indeed far behind. After all, according to the display of the sensor, Ebisu was basically sleeping the whole time. However, Orochimaru, who didn't know the inside story, was still repeating Ebisu's name repeatedly, and it seemed that he had a great interest in him. Ebisu, it seems that you have to pray for good luck. Xia Yan muttered in his heart. At this time, the tense snake was still blocked by the wraps strung on the fangs, and was shaking his head frantically, trying to shake it off. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Obito put Ebisu's hand on his shoulder, turned his head and said to Ashuma, "Ashuma, let's run." Even though he was reckless and never gave up, he knew that it would be impossible for him and Ashuma to defeat the giant snake. Not to mention that they had to take care of Anko and Ebisu. However, Ashuma seemed to have different ideas. He was silent for a moment, as if he had made a decision, and suddenly drew out his ninja sword, turned around and looked at the giant snake not far away and said, "Obito, you take them away first, I will buy you some time." "Ashuma, you idiot, what are you talking about?" Obito said anxiously. "Now is not the time for you to show off." Ashuma said, "I'm not trying to show off. Obito, you can see that we can't run out of this forest before being caught up by this monster snake with the two of them. So if we don't want to be wiped out, someone must delay that time." Obito opened his mouth when he heard it, but couldn't find any words to refute for a while. Red Bean, who thought she was out of danger, looked around at the two people and felt a strong regret in her heart. If it weren't for her, they wouldn't be involved in such danger. At this time, Obito gritted his teeth and said, "In that case, I'll stay." Ha ha. Ashuma suddenly laughed out loud. How can such an important mission be given to a person like Obito, who is the last one? And you also said, how can I give you such a good opportunity to show off? As he said that, Ashuma was already waving his ninja sword and rushed towards the giant snake. Don't forget, I'm the captain of the Shuriken team. Damn, Ashuma. Obito also knew that this was not the time to waste time, so he took a deep look at Ashuma's back, carried Ebisu on his back, and called Red Bean to leave. You must hold on, Ashuma, I will bring people back soon. Obito gritted his teeth in his heart. However, at this moment, the sound of breaking wind suddenly sounded. Two red shurikens flew from nowhere and stabbed into the ground in front of Obito and Ashuma respectively. What is this? The two immediately stopped and picked up the shurikens in front of them. Obviously, the shape of this shuriken is very similar to the rune shuriken they used. The only difference is that there are two golden characters on it. Secret. Could it be? Teacher Xia Yan? Are you here? Obito looked around quickly. However, there was no response. The two looked at the giant snake that was about to recover its sight, knowing that there was no time to think so much. So they looked at each other and nodded heavily at the same time. There was no way, it seemed that they could only bet on these two shurikens. After Obito placed Ebisu and Red Bean behind a big tree, he soon reunited with Ashuma and came not far from the giant snake. At this time, the giant snake just threw the piece of cloth away and finally recovered its sight. It first looked around, and saw that Obito and Ashuma did not run away, and its blood-red eyes showed a human-like surprise. You didn't take the opportunity to escape? What gave you the courage? Chapter 183 The Legend of Yaki. This was the first time that Juuza spoke to Obito and the others. Because after seeing that the two dared to challenge it, it finally stopped treating the three little ghosts as prey that could be swallowed at will, but as enemies that needed to be dealt with. However, its words were not responded to. Although Ashuma and Obito are very surprised that the giant snake suddenly spoke human words, they were no longer in the mood to think so much. Because they had each installed the ultimate shuriken on the katana, and at the same time injected chakra into the handle as usual to drive the rotation of the shuriken. However, they soon discovered that this ultimate shuriken was like a bottomless pit. After they injected 3 or 4 times the chakra of ordinary shuriken ninjutsu, they still couldn't activate it. The two subconsciously looked at each other and soon realized that after this move, they might use up all the chakra they could use like Ebisu, but when the time came, they had no other choice. They shouted at the same time and accelerated to inject all their chakra into the ninja sword. In this case, let's use this move to decide the outcome. Soon, the shuriken on the two ninja swords began to spin at high speed, emitting dazzling red light. The giant snake, who was waiting for their reply, realized that they had not officially started fighting, but were actually accumulating a big move without any respect for ninjutsu. Out of anger at being ignored and subconsciously being wary of the moves they were about to launch, the giant snake made a decision in an instant, opened its bloody mouth and bit the two people. But at the same time, the ninja sword in Ashuma's hand just flashed a dazzling flame, then that flame was quickly eroded by purple and turned into a burning purple flame. Then Ashuma had a blessing in his heart, holding the ninja sword tightly with both hands, and swung it hard from bottom to top along the ground. Shuriken Ninja Art Secret, 8 wine cups. Boom. 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 As Ashuma swung the ninja sword, hot purple flames emerged from the ground one after another, and quickly approached the oncoming giant snake along a straight line. The giant snake that was originally rushing towards them was reminded of the painful memory just now by the purple flames. For a moment, it was a little afraid and stopped its forward momentum, trying to avoid the fire column attack that had already arrived in front of it. However, just as it tried to avoid the attack trajectory of the fire column with its snake skin, the purple fire column actually began to fork rapidly, blocking its escape route. Then the fire column continued to extend, completely blocking the giant snake's retreat. A full purple fire column surrounded the giant snake like a cage, constantly rotating rapidly, leaving it no chance to escape. Plop. Ashuma, whose battlesuit had been automatically removed, half-knelt on the ground and barely avoided falling down by stabbing the ground with a ninja sword. Sure enough, the teacher is too partial. The most prominent place was still taken away by you, Obito. Ashuma looked at Obito speechlessly. Don't let down like usual, kid. Leave it to me. Obito also said seriously. At this time, his ninja sword finally finished charging, and the amount of chakra absorbed was even more than Ashuma's previous move. The shuriken on the katana was spinning rapidly, making a buzzing sound. Then Obito held the ninja sword horizontally in front of him with his right hand, and his left hand was in a palm shape, slowly wiping from the katana, the blade to the tip of the blade. Along with his movements, a ball of deep red and rich hot flames began to slowly climb up the entire blade. It is not difficult to see that Obito and Ashuma's moves complement each other. If Ashuma's moves had not restricted the enemy, Obito's move that had been charged for too long would not have had a chance to be used. And at this moment, it was the best time to use this move. Shuriken Ninja Art Secret, Obito shouted, rushed towards the giant snake that was still surrounded by the fire pillar, and then jumped up with the blazing ninja sword held high. In the giant snake's terrified eyes, Obito used all his strength to cut it down with one knife. Orokai. Boom. The next moment, a violent red flame shot up from the woods. The giant snake's figure was instantly covered by the hellish scene of Red Lotus. The only thing that could make people feel its existence was the screams of the giant snake. After a short and long wait, the terrible flames gradually extinguished. Thanks to the giant snake's tossing just now, it inadvertently created a fire break around it, which prevented the fire from spreading further. Obito and Ashuma, who looked exhausted, were now supporting each other and coming to the open space that had turned into a scorched earth. Looking at the huge snake corpse in the middle of the open space, the two finally breathed a sigh of relief, and then collapsed back to back on the ground. This time it was really over. Although the giant snake was defeated, the two had no real sense of victory. Because if it weren't for the equipment given by teacher Xia Yan, especially the ultimate shuriken that suddenly appeared at the end, they would probably have been swallowed by the giant snake at the beginning. The two who were originally a little complacent about their recent progress finally realized after this battle that they still have a long way to go, and this may be the reason why Xia Yan has been watching from the sidelines and not taking direct action. I'm sorry, Xia Yan, I cancelled the summoning technique at the last minute, leaving only a snake's love where it was. Orochimaru said apologetically, if I really let the guy die here, I won't be able to explain what happened to the Raichi cave. The snake's love is my apology to you, Xia Yan, and Ashuma. I'm really sorry for involving you in order to test my disciples. Orochimaru bowed slightly. Xia Yan waved his hands repeatedly and said, Lord Orochimaru, you are too kind. I should thank you for creating such a good opportunity for them to fight. Hearing this, Orochimaru recalled the last scene and couldn't help but smile with interest. 8 wine cups, Orokai. It seems that you, Xia Yan, also know a lot about the legend of the Yamato no Orokai. We can exchange ideas if we have a chance. Xia Yan couldn't help but twitch his mouth slightly when he heard this. He actually forgot that the person in front of him was the real Yamato no Orokai. Fortunately, he hasn't developed the Yamato no Jutsu yet, so he shouldn't feel offended. Orochimaru then asked curiously. Speaking of which, I have a small question. Although the two jutsu used by Ashuma and the others just now are powerful, why do I always feel that the actual effect doesn't seem to be as powerful as it looks? Orochimaru looked at Xia Yan with curiosity. Xia Yan spread his hands and said, special effects, because I added special effects in it. This is the so-called lack of power, special effects to make up for it. When Orochimaru heard this, his face rose slightly, and then he smiled bigly. I really don't understand the thoughts of you young people. No, Lord Orochimaru, you are still very young. Xia Yan said, and then he was still complaining in his heart. And you will get younger and younger in the future. After satisfying his curiosity, Orochimaru said, since the matter is over, I should also say goodbye. The fire just now should have attracted the attention of the Anbu, but I will send them away by the way, so you don't have to worry about it, Xia Yan. Xia Yan also nodded to show that he understood. So Orochimaru turned around and prepared to leave. However, he didn't take a few steps, and seemed to suddenly remember something, turned back and smiled. Xia Yan, if you have time one day, why not come to my research institute and sit down? I have a lot of questions about sealing techniques, and I want to discuss with you. It seems that after watching the battle just now, Orochimaru has a new idea about Xia Yan. If it is Xia Yan, maybe he can provide him with a unique breakthrough in studying fairy techniques, Orochimaru thought to himself. Xia Yan readily agreed to what he said. But he was thinking, I have so many research projects now, maybe I can outsource some of the less important ones to Orochimaru. The two of them, each thinking about how to take advantage of the other, agreed to meet at a certain time, and then reluctantly said goodbye, ending this meeting. Chapter 184 Strange Shop. Ebisu, wake up. The faint call from his ear and the slight slap on his face gradually made the unconscious Ebisu regain consciousness. What's wrong with me, Ebisu? who was still lying on the ground, murmured in a low voice, feeling inexplicable soreness all over his body, and his head was as blurry as a ball of paste. The only thing he vaguely remembered was that he seemed to have just caught the little girl who fell from the tree, and then, a pair of terrifying huge snake eyes suddenly appeared in his mind. Ah! Ebisu remembered everything at once, and sat up suddenly after a strange cry. However, just when he wanted to comfort himself that it was just a nightmare, the first thing that caught his eye was the head of a giant snake. It turned out, the nightmare is not over yet. Ah! Ebisu let out another strange cry, then rolled his eyes, fell backwards and was about to faint again. Unexpectedly, at this moment, his back was suddenly supported by a hand on each side, preventing him from falling again. Ebisu subconsciously looked around, and saw Ashuma and Obito looking at him with a smirk on their faces. Ebisu, you're finally awake. Obito said, actually, I've already advised Ashuma not to scare you like this, but unfortunately he refused to listen. After all, he is the captain. Are you willing to admit that I am the captain now? Ashuma rolled his eyes slightly and said, but before you say that, Obito, please put away your gloating smile. Ebisu listened to the two people's teasing words, and his heart finally eased. He looked carefully and found that what was in front of him was actually just the corpse of the giant snake. It seems, during the time when he lost consciousness, the battle was over. As for the result, judging from the current situation, it should be quite clear at a glance. Sugoi. Just as Ashuma and Obito are vividly telling Ebisu how they defeated the giant snake, little Anka was also circling around the huge snake corpse, while constantly jumping and cheering. Sugoi. Because she'd finally learned her lesson this time and was not so reckless. So even when Ashuma and Obito's ultimates burst out with that amazing momentum, she did not sneak a peek and hid honestly. Therefore, she did not witness the scene of the two people working together to kill the giant snake. However, when she was sure that the battle was over, Anko walked to the battlefield that had turned into a scorched earth, and saw the burnt giant snake corpse. She was still shocked. After all, it was really difficult for her to connect the scene in front of her with the two people who were not much older than her. However, Anko, who had not even started attending the ninja school, had no clear understanding of the strength of ninjas. So she quickly thought that this was just the basic operation of the ninja school students. She only envied them and yearned for the ninja school life that was about to begin. These complex emotions gathered together and turned into Hondo Sai again. Sugoi. Well, maybe because she hasn't started school yet, Hondo's vocabulary seems to be a little lacking. As a senior ninja school student, Ebisu's feelings were much deeper. At this time, he had also listened to the previous review given to him by Ashuma and Obito. After squeezing out the water from their self-boasting, the story they told still amazed Ebisu. He didn't expect that so many things would happen after he fainted. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel a little bitter in his heart. Sure enough, I'm still not as good as them, Ebisu smiled bitterly in his heart. He thought that he should have caught up with everyone after joining the research group and under the guidance of teacher Xia Yan, but he didn't expect that the gap seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. It seems that although he has made great progress, they who have the blood of the ninja clan have not stopped, and even made greater progress than him. Is this the insurmountable gap between the ninja clan and the common people? As expected, genius is not scary. What is scary is that genius is no worse than himself in hard work. Although Ebisu also knew that the two of them were able to defeat the giant snake because of the two secret shuriken that suddenly appeared. Even so, the premise is that they must have the ability to perform the secret. You know, using those two secrets almost drained their chakra, not to mention himself who has always been at the bottom of the chakra. But more importantly, he fainted during the battle. Compared with them who persisted to the end and obtained the two secret shuriken, he didn't even have the qualifications to try. Thinking of this, Ebisu suddenly thought of something. That is, when Obito and the others began to tell the story, he seemed to have been lying on the ground. But his memory still stayed at the moment of saving Red Bean, so how did he get down to the ground safely? Ebisu quickly asked his question. Unexpectedly, Ashuma and Obito looked a little strange after hearing Ebisu's question. Ebisu, you are not kidding, are you? Ashuma scratched his head and said, you finally managed to show off. You don't want to say that you don't remember it at all. Seeing that Ebisu was still confused, Ashuma and Obito looked at each other, and then helplessly began to use words to give Ebisu a best replay of the whole game. Did I really do those actions you said? After a moment, Ebisu stuttered and pointed at himself. Obito and Ashuma nodded helplessly. Because this was the third time Ebisu asked this question. After confirming it again and again, Ebisu finally believed their statement. After all, there was no need for them to play such a joke on him, and otherwise it could not explain how he escaped the threat of the giant snake and returned to the ground with Red Bean. Ebisu couldn't help but raise his hands and looked at it repeatedly, still in disbelief. Could it be that there was a power hidden in his body that he didn't know about? Just when Ebisu began to suspect that he might have been picked up by his parents, Red Bean, who had vented his excitement, also came over. Luckily, you big brothers are here today. Otherwise, I would have been eaten by this big bad snake. Little Red Bean bowed vigorously to express her gratitude, and then said goodbye to them and prepared to go home. At this moment, Ashuma suddenly called Red Bean and said, Red Bean, I wonder if you know a person named Orokimura? Ashuma asked this question for a reason. He didn't get out of danger just now, so he didn't get too entangled, but now thinking back, the appearance and actions of this giant snake are actually weird everywhere. First of all, it is very unusual for such a big snake to appear around Konoha, but this is not completely impossible. Red Bean, who is not even a ninja school student, has not been caught up, but this can also be explained as the giant snake just playing with its prey. However, in the end, the giant snake actually spoke directly, which is not something that can be explained casually. So Ashuma could easily associate the whole village with the closest relationship with snakes, and even the man whose name has the word snake in it. Hey, Ashuma brother, do you know my teacher too? Red Bean said with her hands on her hips a little proudly. I was just accepted as a disciple by Orokimura today. I heard that he is a very powerful ninja. But she murmured a little. But maybe the teacher is not as powerful as I thought, because I was attacked by the big bad snake not long after I walked out of the teacher's research institute, and the teacher didn't show up in the end. No, your teacher was probably watching nearby from beginning to end. Ashuma wiped his sweat in his heart. After listening to Red Bean's words, he was very sure that the giant snake should be Orokimura Brothers' summoning beast. But he didn't expect that he would be so hardcore in testing his disciples who haven't even started school yet. Fortunately, he was following teacher Xia Yan. Ashuma, who had just come up with this idea, suddenly thought of a secret shuriken that appeared out of nowhere. Could it be that teacher Xia Yan was actually watching nearby? Thinking of the scene where teacher Xia Yan and brother Orokimura might be eating melons and laughing at their suffering, Ashuma couldn't help but shiver with anger. Can this Konoha be good? What should we students do to satisfy your teachers? This village is full of oppression of students. When can students really stand up? Ashuma couldn't help but look at Hondo with sympathy and said, it seems that it's not easy for us to have our own teachers, huh? Hondo looked puzzled. Nothing. Ashuma didn't dare to say bad things about the two directly, so he had to be vague. After all, he didn't know if the two guys with bad tastes were still around. Then the three of them decided to send Hondo home just in case, so everyone left the battlefield and walked towards the village. After they left for a while, Xia Yan suddenly appeared next to the huge snake corpse. No, it should be said that it was the snake's skin. He left just now, but actually went home to get the storage scroll. Because the snake's skin was not small, the storage scrolls and storage cards on him were not enough. After all, these storage items cannot be stored with the same storage items, so the items he has are limited. And he originally planned to ask Ashuma and the others for help, but he didn't expect to find that they were gone when he came back. Forget it, leave them alone. Xia Yan rubbed his hands, looking at the snake skin in front of him like a chef looking at ingredients, thinking about how to make the best use of this thing. You know, this snake skin from the Raichi cave is not a material that can be easily obtained. At least part of the materials for him and his students to upgrade their battle suits have been found. On the other hand, Ashuma and the others are still on their way to send Hondo home. Along the way, although Ashuma didn't dare to say it clearly, out of the idea of making trouble for the culprit of this incident, he still told Hondo about the famous deed of brother Orokimura. A ninjutsu genius born from an ordinary person, a disciple of the third Hokage, fought with Jiraiya and summoned against Hanzo, and won the title of the three ninjas. These deeds made even the ignorant little Red Bean marvel and admire her newly worshipped teacher even more. However, the next step was when Ashuma's true intentions were revealed. Because he immediately began to give Red Bean the concept of ordinary spirit beasts, and casually mentioned that brother Orokimura had signed a contract with Raichido and actually had the ability to summon giant snakes. Red Bean, who had just been attacked by a giant snake, naturally realized something quickly after hearing this. Ashuma also laughed in his heart when he saw this. He just told Red Bean something that many people knew, and in fact, she would know it sooner or later, and he just accelerated the process. Then he heard Red Bean suddenly say with excitement, then Teacher Orochimura can summon a big bad snake like the one just now. It's amazing. I also want to learn this trick. Is this a question of whether it is amazing or not? Ashuma complained helplessly in his heart. Seeing Hondo's face full of longing and no doubt at all, he couldn't help thinking, this Hondo doesn't seem to be very smart. Time began to fly, and soon another 10 days passed. In the afternoon, Hondo came out of the Teacher's Research Institute as usual and returned to the village. Although only 10 days had passed, Hondo's face was already deeply tired. It seemed that she had endured pressure that she shouldn't have endured at her age. Even the small red school bag she was carrying seemed particularly heavy. Hondo had been looking forward to the teacher's teaching after learning about the teacher's deeds from Ashuma. She expected to learn all kinds of powerful skills from the teacher. Even if she didn't expect to be as powerful as the teacher, she couldn't lose to Ashuma and the others. However, after the formal class, she was speechless to find that the first ninjutsu taught by Orochimura was actually a strange ninjutsu called sealing technique. This ninjutsu that required learning to draw ghost paintings was obviously not suitable for Hondo, who was naturally jumpy, so Hondo did not protest. However, Orochimura had no intention of changing his mind, and even said to Anko, "Anko, I will teach you the knowledge of sealing techniques first, because there may be a selection test for sealing techniques soon after the ninja school starts. And that is also my test for you. If you can't successfully pass the test to join the research group of sealing techniques, you can't become my real disciple either." Recalling Orochimura's words with a smile on his face but not at all joking, Anko's heart began to feel bitter. Obviously, although Orochimura had made an appointment with Xia Yan to communicate with each other, he did not give up on fleecing Xia Yan from other directions. As the research group where Xia Yan first tried various inventions, Orochimura would naturally not miss the idea of inserting people in it. And after seeing the performance of Xia Yan's students, Orochimura also had a high evaluation of Xia Yan's teaching level. Under the premise that he had no intention of teaching Anko, he finally decided to simply foster Anko in Xia Yan's research group instead of letting her go. Perhaps in this way, Anko in a few years will bring him some surprises. Hondo, who didn't know what the teacher was thinking, only had deep resentment towards the sealing technique in her heart. Because even if today's class was over, she still had to do a lot of related homework after returning home, and she had no time to rest. This was obviously her last carefree time before going to the ninja school. Why did she have to bear such a heavy burden for the sealing technique test? Sealing technique, what a disgusting thing. Just as Hondo was complaining about the sealing technique in her heart while walking into an alley, suddenly a small figure slowly passed by her eyes, which attracted her attention. Because, what she saw was actually a small plant that could walk. And this plant not only used its roots to walk, but even the trumpet-like flower bud had 2 round, black eyes, which looked cute. Wow, so cute. Hondo shouted subconsciously, and the previous fatigue was swept away. Who knew that the creature, who didn't know whether it was a plant or not, seemed to be startled by her voice and immediately ran forward at a faster speed. "Hey, wait!" Hondo said quickly, and then followed with excitement. Compared with going home to do homework, she would rather look at this little cutie a few more times. In addition, Hondo actually had another idea. If she gave this little thing to Teacher Orochimura and begged for mercy, then maybe she could avoid the hard work of learning the sealing technique. Hondo made up her mind and ran after the wonderful little plant with her short legs. Don't run, I don't mean any harm. As for whether Teacher Orochimura would put it on the dissection table, that was not something that little Hondo could decide. Hondo kept calling out, but unfortunately the little plant ignored her and kept turning left and right, running away quickly in the alleys of Konoha. Hondo chased for a while but couldn't catch it, and the stubborn temper in her character became stronger and stronger. She would never give up until she caught up with the little thing. After a while, Hondo, who was a little out of breath, followed the little plant out of the alley and came to a street. Then she was horrified to find that there were several creatures exactly like the little plant running on the street. Behind them, there were also several children like her, and everyone was showing a look of surprise for the same reason. They thought they were the chosen ones, so they encountered the magical little plant. They didn't expect that there would be so many chosen children, but they didn't have time to think about it, because the little plants had begun to merge and suddenly ran in one direction. Hondo and the other children looked at each other, and continued to follow. Although they always felt something was wrong, it had come to this point, and they couldn't just watch this opportunity pass to others. So soon Hondo and the other children followed the little plants and rushed to a store they had never seen before. There were 5 big words on the sign above the door. Konoha Game Hall. Chapter 185 Konoha Game Hall. Konoha Game Hall. What a strange name. Was there such a store here before? A trace of doubt flashed through Hondo's mind. Then she saw those small plants with long legs running straight into the store from the gate, and other children couldn't wait to follow them in. This scene slowed down Hondo's pace. Although she might be able to unlock the secrets behind these plants as long as she went in, Hondo still hesitated. After all, she was unlucky enough to be chased by a giant snake not long ago, so she would naturally be wary of these strange creatures. Hondo was deceived by their cute appearance just now, but now that she calmed down, she could find that this matter was actually very strange. Not to mention the fact that these small plants can actually walk and run. Just seeing that they were all discovered by children at the same time, and then they ran here at the same time, it was very unusual. It was as if they were deliberately led here. Although the name of this place is called a game hall, it can't be done to attract customers, right? Although no one asked Hondo what she thought, Hondo also knew that there must be something strange about this matter. So even after watching the other children disappear into the gate, Hondo was still struggling. Even if she told the adults, they probably wouldn't believe her easily. Should she take the risk and go in to find out what's going on, or pretend nothing happened and go home to do her homework? Do homework, do that annoying sealing technique homework, do the mountain of sealing technique homework. Hondo's mind seemed to suddenly hear the sound of one end of the scale being crushed by a heavy weight and hitting the ground. In an instant, she had made a decision, and she stepped forward at full speed and rushed in. For Konoha, for the peace of the ninja world, Hondo decided to go deep into the tiger's den to find out what's going on. It's not because she doesn't want to do her homework. Just as Hondo resolutely rushed into the Konoha game hall, several small figures wearing tights of different colors were discussing on the rooftop of the building opposite. Why do I feel that the last kid looks familiar? A little guy in a red battlesuit touched his chin and said, "Forget it, this time I finally tricked another group of kids in, ouch." Before he finished speaking, he was hit in the ribs and let out a strange cry. "Ashuma, why are you talking so harshly?" Yui Kyorane, who was wearing a pink battlesuit and had just punched Ashuma, said with her hands on her hips, "Can you say that ninja things are tricks? And didn't the teacher say it? This is a test for us to see how well we have mastered the projection technique." Obviously, Kyorane was very interested in this test from teacher Xia Yan. After all, using projection to trick, no, it is to secretly guide the actions of those little brats, which is very similar to the use of illusions that Kyorane has always liked, and naturally aroused her interest. So she even willingly put on the battlesuit that she had never been interested in. There was no other way, because although they had mastered the basic projection technique, they still could not project as accurately over a long distance as the teacher. So they can only rely on the built-in projection positioning function of the ninja sword to achieve the same effect, so that they can secretly control the projection and guide the children. However, as the number of transformations increased, Home gradually felt the beauty of this battlesuit. Because as long as she put on the tights and the mask, she felt a sense of isolation from the identity of Yui Kyorane. Things that she usually didn't dare to do or say because of her image seemed to be easy to do after she transformed into a peach ninja. After all, those were Yui Kyorane's concerns. What did they have to do with her peach ninja? So now even when Home is getting along with Ashuma, the son of the Okage, she is not as polite as before. Ashuma, who is Home's #1 licker, naturally noticed the changes in the other party and was also muttering in his heart. Before, he accidentally heard his father whispering behind his back whether his mother had reached menopause, so her personality had changed so much. Is Home also in menopause? I'll ask Home when I have a chance. No, as expected, I should ask my mother about this kind of thing first. Ashuma thought. But he was not dissatisfied with Home's change. He was even a little happy. Because Home always gave him a subtle sense of propriety and was a little difficult to approach, but the current peach ninja made him feel that he and Home were closer. After all, Mom often scolded Dad like this at home. He once asked his mother, and she said that this was actually a manifestation of love. So Ashuma was so happy about this, and even felt an inexplicable pleasure every time he was scolded by Home. At the same time, Xiao Hondo also walked through a long corridor after the entrance, and was deeply shocked by the scene inside. Unlike the ordinary appearance outside, as soon as Hondo walked into the main hall, she felt as if she was in a fairy tale forest. Soft green grass, lush and tall trees, and clusters of colorful flowers and small mushrooms emitting faint light everywhere. On the grass, there were many cute little creatures similar to the small plants she saw walking around. What surprised her even more was that when she looked up, she could actually see the blue sky, white clouds and the dazzling sun. This dreamlike scene gave Hondo a strong sense of time and space confusion. She couldn't help but wonder if she had been caught in the illusion that Orochimaru had introduced to her. But she quickly denied this idea. Because when a small plant struggled past her, she subconsciously squatted down and reached out to touch it. As a result, she found that the small plant had no entity. It was like the effect of a clone. And not only these small plants, Hondo soon discovered that most of the trees, grass, flowers and mushrooms were actually a phantom. This reminded her of the projection technique that Orochimaru had introduced to her in order to attract her interest in learning the sealing technique. Could these be the effects of the so-called projection technique? Hondo walked forward thoughtfully. Then she saw a lot of strange machines placed in front of her. They were in the shape of concentric circles, placed in circles. Probably to blend into the environment, the shell of the machine was also made of wood, and some of them even began to sprout. In front of most of the machines, there was a child about her age. Everyone was either concentrating or shouting and pointing at the machine with their fingers. No one knew what they were doing. In the center of the concentric circles formed by the machine, there was another circular platform, on which a translucent image was emerging. In the image, a cartoon character with long flowing hair was commanding different types of strange plants and fighting against some rotten and scary monsters. Below it was a line of artistic words. Would release versus zombies. Although she didn't quite understand the meaning of this line of words, Hondo was familiar with the cartoon character. The first Hokage. In addition to being able to see each other's appearance every day on the Okinawan, her father also bought her a plush doll at the first Hokage during the Chinese New Year, and it was the kind that could talk when you pinched it. She loved it so much. Thinking of this, Hondo couldn't help but think of her father. Although her mother had said before that her father had gone to a very far place and she might not see him for a long time. However, Hondo, who had no concept of a long time, still didn't feel any reality about what her mother said. After all, when Dad went out on a mission, he would only come back in a long time. But now that the cartoon character reminded her of her memory, little Hondo felt that she missed her dad again, but this thought did not last long. Hondo continued to approach and soon saw the real purpose of these machines. Under the operation of the children standing in front of the machine, miniature plants appeared on the table of the machine one after another, fighting with the monsters that kept running out of the fog on the other side. Even on their side, there was also a cartoon man with long flowing hair and wearing red armor. It was exactly the same as the image she saw from the central platform just now. At this time, Hondo finally understood why this store was called an arcade. It turned out that this was really just a place for people to play games with those strange machines. Hondo then remembered that her father seemed to have said that there was a strange tavern in the village, and you could also play a game called keening cards through strange machines. I guess the two should not be much different. So those little plants with legs might really just be a means to attract customers. Hondo, who finally solved all the mysteries, felt a sense of loss. Sure enough, there are not so many adventures in this world, and even if there are, she won't encounter them every time. More importantly, after the mystery is revealed, it also means that she should go home to do her homework. There is no other way. It seems that she can only go home. Although she thought so in her heart, Hondo still didn't take a step, and still stared at the child not far away who was playing games on the machine. Seeing the other party put a carnivorous plant on the table of the machine and swallowed the enemy in one bite, Hondo couldn't help but feel a little greedy. By the way, this game looks so fun, it's a pity that she has no time at all. If she looks at it a few more times, she should go home. No, look at it again, but after several seconds, Hondo still didn't move a bit. I didn't see it clearly at the last glance, just look at it again. That guy is about to win, look again. Haha, that dancing zombie is so weird, let me take another look. Just as Hondo kept looking at herself, a figure began to walk towards her. It was not until she felt the surroundings inexplicably become a little dim that Hondo came back to her senses. Then she saw her own shadow on the ground in front of her, covered by a thin figure with long hair. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 186, Capable Subordinates. Master, Orochimaru. I was tricked into coming here. If you want to blame someone, blame the owner of this store. He is so cunning that the guilty Red Bean shuddered when she saw the long-haired figure and subconsciously defended herself. But when she turned around, she found that the other person was not the teacher or Okimura she imagined, but a big sister wearing round framed glasses and long light yellow hair. "Ah, sorry, sister, I recognized the wrong person," Red Bean apologized quickly. "It's okay. This big sister wearing glasses is actually the pharmacist Nano who was transferred to this store by Xia Yan to help." She smiled and replied, but she was still thinking about the world's master or Okimura that Red Bean had just said. The figure of the feminine man who appeared next to Danzo from time to time appeared in her mind. So Okimura has accepted another disciple, but this doesn't seem to have any impact on her mission. So after recording this information that she didn't know whether it could be used, Nano also came back to her senses. "Then sister, what do you want to talk to me about?" Red Bean asked. Hearing this, Nano squatted down with his knees pressed, so that his eyes were level with Hondo's, and said gently, "Hello, actually I saw you were so absorbed in watching, so I wanted to ask if you want to play this game yourself." Okay, Hondo subconsciously wanted to agree, but soon shook her head with a bitter face. "But I still have to go home to do my homework. If I don't finish my homework, my teacher and mother will be disappointed. It's really great that you can think about them so much." Nano smiled gently, "But I see that you seem very tired, you must have been studying non-stop recently." When Hondo nodded hesitantly, Nano said again, "In fact, the owner of our store is also a very good teacher. He once told me the importance of combining work and rest. In short, taking appropriate rest and relaxation during work and study will make you more efficient than just studying." "Sister, are you serious?" Hondo opened her eyes wide and asked expectantly. "There is such a good thing in this world, playing can actually improve learning efficiency." "Of course it's true," Nano said with a smile. "In fact, our boss used this principle in the last semester of the ninja school, and many students make great progress. If you still don't believe it, why not try it yourself?" Hondo was very moved by Nano's words, but this enthusiasm soon cooled down. She suddenly patted her pockets with both hands and said with a sad face, "Ah, but I don't have any money." Who knew that Nano's next word sounded like the sound of nature? "It doesn't matter, our store has just opened and is still in the promotion period, so you can try it for free during the 2 months of this holiday." Free trial. And for 2 whole months. Hondo's eyes widened in surprise. Now she finally believed the saying that the owner of this store is a teacher at the ninja school. Because it seems that he doesn't know how to do business at all. Hondo finally made up her mind and decided to experience the magical effect of combining work and rest for herself. She was not recommended because it was free or something. It was because she felt that this store would not be open for long, and she had to play as much as she could before it closed down, so she was then led by Nano towards the vacant game console nearby. Poor little Red Bean, she still didn't understand that free things are the most expensive. After a long while, Nano helped Red Bean open an account, and taught her how to play a few levels. After seeing that she had roughly understood the gameplay of this game, he said goodbye to Red Bean and left. Under the dimensionality reduction attack of a cross-era game like Wood Release vs. Zombies, Red Bean was completely immersed in the game at this time, and didn't even hear Nano's farewell words. Nano, who was already accustomed to this scene, just smiled slightly and left slowly. But before she took a few steps, a figure in a white coat appeared in front of her. "It seems that Nano, you were getting more and more comfortable with your work here." Xia Yan, who had just watched Nano's work performance, did not hesitate to give her praise. "It is indeed the right choice to let you be in charge of this game hall for children. It is thanks to you, otherwise this store would not be able to get on track so quickly." "Boss, you are too kind," Nano said with a smile. "What really attracted everyone is the game console and games you invented. Even without me, the result would not be much different." Xia Yan waved his hand and said, "Nano, you are too modest. Although my invention can indeed make this a good game hall, it is with your assistance, Nano, that this place can become a truly perfect game hall that all children really like." Although Xia Yan's words sounded a bit exaggerated, there was not much water mixed in them. He really thought that Nano was a very capable subordinate. After all, she had just joined the tavern as a waitress not long ago, but now she was able to stand out so quickly and be in charge of the management of a branch, relying on her strong affinity and rapidly improving business talent. You must know that except for the machines, everything else in this Konoha game hall is handled by Nano. Only Nano, who is most familiar with the aesthetics of children, could design this game room that looks like a fairy tale kingdom. Although this is very different from the style of the game room in Xia Yan's previous life, and he can't appreciate this aesthetic, but when he sees the happy and relaxed expressions of the children in the game room, he knows that Nano has indeed made the most correct choice. At least this place has not become a place where demons dance and cults gather like the tavern at the beginning. So Xia Yan is very satisfied with Nano's performance. But the more capable she is, the more helpless Xia Yan is. After all, in the final analysis, she is essentially Danzo's subordinate and a chess piece buried by the other side. So don't think that she is a good helper now, but you can't say when she will become Danzo's poisonous blade stabbing at you. Even if he doesn't give the other party a chance, if Danzo changes his mind and transfers Nono, Xia Yan will feel very sorry. After all, Nono is really useful. To make a simple analogy, it is similar to Kabuto Yakushi, who will inherit her glasses in the future. Although he doesn't show off on the surface, he is actually a rare all-rounder who learns everything very quickly. It's just that because his upper limit is relatively low without cheating, he is more suitable to be a deputy and as an SSR-level auxiliary talent. So Xia Yan also feels a little sorry for Nano and even Kabuto Yakushi. They have such strong talents, but they were dragged to be spies by the damn Danzo. What a waste of talent. So Xia Yan had already made up his mind to intercept and snatch Nano and even the future Kabuto from Danzo. To take both mother and son. According to the plot in the original work and Xia Yan's own understanding of Nono, it is not impossible to persuade Nono to defect. However, in order to successfully NTR Danzo and make Nono his own, a key obstacle must be solved first. That is the Sanshi brain pill used by Danzo to control Nono. No, it's a curse seal. During this period of time, Xia Yan has been using the excuse of testing games to frequently extract Nono's chakra, and then reverse the curse seal inside. Although he has not yet fully mastered the knowledge of the curse seal, he is actually very confident that he can simply remove the curse seal on Nono. However, he cannot do this now. Because the curse seal contains Danzo's chakra, once it is removed, Danzo, as the main body, will soon notice it. It is conceivable that Danzo will be furious when he knows that the foundation of his existence, the curse seal, has been broken by him. That will only lead to a situation where the two will fight to the death. Xia Yan is still in a period of rapid growth, and he does not want to provoke Danzo, who has all his limbs intact and obviously has the strength of a kid. Therefore, even if he can now remove the curse seal on Nono, he still cannot act rashly. However, as Nono's importance continues to increase, this problem must be solved as soon as possible. As for the solution, Xia Yan decided to start in the field he is good at and continue to conduct in-depth research on the curse seal. However, he could not find any more useful information or breakthroughs from the curse seal formula in Nono's body. So he had to obtain more curse seal formula samples like Nono's from other channels, or directly obtain more in-depth knowledge of curse seals. Xia Yan had no idea about the former for the time being, but as for the latter, Xia Yan just happened to have a way to obtain this knowledge. Chapter 187 The Evil System BU. With the hit of a P-bullet emitting cold air, the last zombie that was frozen into a ball of ice was instantly torn into pieces, turning into ice cubes on the ground and gradually disappearing. Then a cleared prompt box appeared above the battlefield. Great, another level has been cleared. The little red bean in front of the game console jumped up and cheered, echoing the little pillar on the table who was also dancing with joy. After she was happy, she analyzed with great interest. Sure enough, the ice archer I was rewarded with before is really useful. BU. 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 It can freeze those zombies and prevent them from moving. Looking at the introduction in the game, they seem to use some kind of ice escape, which looks very practical. If I learn this trick, can't I turn red bean soup into iced red bean soup at any time? Thinking of this, Hondo wiped the saliva from the corner of her mouth and made up her mind. I've decided, I want to learn ice escape, too. Teacher Orokimura is so powerful, he must know this. Hondo, who had no idea that she was actually making things difficult for her teacher, clicked on the option for the next level with anticipation. I just passed the level and got another reward, the piranha plant. Let's try its effect next. However, unlike usual, the next level did not appear in front of the little Hondo who was rubbing her hands, but a message box popped up again. At the same time, probably to take care of the children who were not very literate, the game console also sounded a reminder voice. Your cumulative game time today has exceeded 1 hour. Xiao Jin kindly reminds you. You will not be able to continue playing today. Please look into the distance, move your body, arrange your game time reasonably, and pay attention to the combination of work and rest after the voice playback ended. Hondo was still stunned and unbelievable. Wait, the first thing that surprised her was that she felt that she had not played for a long time. How could an hour passed in a flash? Where did the time go? If it could be like this when I was in class with teacher Orokimura and doing homework. But what surprised Hondo even more was this so-called anti-addiction system. There is such an evil rule in the world. Why can you only play for 1 hour a day? This is too unreasonable. Hondo, who was unwilling to accept the fact, subconsciously clicked on the option of the next level again. As a result, the anti-addiction reminder voice was played again. Although this voice was very similar to the voice of the big sister just now and sounded very gentle, the content inside made Hondo unacceptable. After all, she had just experienced unprecedented happiness. How could she be stopped from playing all of a sudden? Although it said that she could continue playing tomorrow, how could she bear such torture when she was already addicted? Hondo even thought of giving it a try. After looking around to see if there was anyone around, she lay on the game table and begged the game console in a low voice. Game console, can you let me play for a while longer? Perhaps it was the magic of this game console and the voice prompts that made Hondo think that this machine should be quite smart and perhaps understand what she said. As a result, the game actually responded to what she said. Xiaoshurama on a table suddenly clapped his hands and conjured up a wooden house with 3 bedrooms and 2 living rooms in front of him, then waved to her, walked into the wooden house, and closed the door with a snap. A few seconds later, the curtains of the wooden house were drawn, and soon there was a faint snoring sound. ? Hey. This way of rejection is too annoying. Hondo was so angry that she held her head with both hands, gritting her teeth. Sure enough, this store will soon go bankrupt. After all, who would push customers out? Although they don't charge money now, judging from the meaning of the prompt, they will probably continue to maintain this evil anti-addiction system when they charge. What kind of villain designed this rule that not only makes the store less profitable, but also makes the players unhappy? Hondo, who was madly complaining, didn't know that the villain in her mind was actually watching her not far behind her. Another crazy one, Xia Yan, who was patrolling the game hall with Nono, couldn't help but curl up his lips slightly when he saw the purple-haired little sister looking crazy. Feel the pain. Xia Yan, who had experienced various anti-addiction packages in his previous life, said, "My pain is greater than yours." There is no doubt that this anti-addiction system is Xia Yan's masterpiece. Because after the hot sales of bikini cards, Xia Yan knew how attractive these game consoles were to the residents of the ninja world. After all, even in the previous life with extremely rich entertainment activities, there were still many people addicted to various games. Not to mention this ninja world where entertainment activities are still very primitive. Moreover, even if Xia Yan was addicted to games in his previous life, he would only become a dead otaku, and it would not be easy for him to starve to death. But these children who play games have a good chance of becoming ninjas, and they will even have to go to the battlefield in a few years. If they really spend a lot of time on games, they may really pay the price of their lives. So whether it is out of conscience or love for leagues, Xia Yan would never do such a thing. For the physical and mental development of children, he still reluctantly promoted the anti-addiction system that brought him a lot of pain in his previous life to the ninja world. So the dragon-slaying hero eventually became a dragon. After a while, Hondo finally came to the 5th stage of facing changes from denial, anger, bargaining, and frustration accepting reality. She was seen listlessly carrying the small school bag on the ground on her shoulders and preparing to go home to do homework. She was still muttering in her heart, "Sure enough, the combination of work and rest is a lie. Why does she feel more tired after playing this game than before?" Just as Hondo reluctantly looked back at the game console and walked towards the door, a burst of exclamations sounded from the side, attracting her attention again. Hondo turned her head and found that there were many children gathered around a game console not far away. What were they all watching? Hondo was curious and walked over to join in the fun. After finally squeezing in, she found that the person everyone was watching was a little girl who was operating the game console quickly. The girl was even younger than her, probably only 3 or 4 years old, so the baby fat on her face was quite obvious, chubby. But the most eye-catching thing was her long red hair, which was dancing like a ball of flame with her large movements. She even heard the children around her shouting and calling the little girl Little Red Comet. Although she felt that the nickname was quite appropriate, Hondo still didn't understand why everyone wanted to watch this guy play games. Although she had watched others play games with interest before, that was before she played the game herself. After she played it herself, she knew that playing it herself was much more interesting than just watching others play. And even if everyone had used up today's game time and was watching others play to kill time, they would not stare at one person. So Hongdo guessed that maybe this little girl was very good at playing, so everyone gathered around to watch. But she had only played for a short time, and she couldn't even recognize all the plants that the girl placed on the game console, let alone understand the tricks. Hongdo only felt that the girl seemed to like using plants that required active operation to take effect, such as cherry bombs, potato mines, and the corn that took up 2 grids, so her operation was also very large, and her fingers kept flying on the table. Hongdo didn't know whether her style was right or not, and she was too lazy to think about the answer herself. She was very familiar with the little boy with shining eyes beside her and said, "That little red comet, is she good?" The little boy was watching the operation of the red-haired girl with an intoxicated look on his face, and sighed. "It's not a question of whether she is good or not, she is really the kind that is rare." He turned his head slightly, and seeing that Hongdo still didn't understand, he said mysteriously, "You'll know if you read on." Seeing that the other party was talking so mysteriously, Hongdo also became quite interested, nodded, and continued to read on. Sure enough, not long after, an amazing picture appeared in front of Hongdo's eyes. Chapter 188. The cheetah. A large wave of zombies is approaching, such words rang out from the game console in front of the red-haired girl. Hongdo was familiar with this voice prompt, because at the end of each level, such words would ring out, and then a large wave of zombies would appear as the final test. However, when she really saw the tense group of zombies pouring out of the fog at one end of the game console, she suddenly opened her eyes wide in surprise. Because the scale of the large wave of zombies she had seen before was simply incomparable to the scale of the large wave of zombies in front of her. In addition, there were a large number of strange zombies that Hongdo had never seen before, and each of them had special skills and looked very difficult to deal with. Seeing her surprised face, the little boy at the side introduced with a little pride, "It seems that you are still a novice. Let me tell you, this is not the ordinary mode you usually play, but the endless mode used by experts to challenge themselves. This mode is said to have no end, and the difficulty will increase greatly with each level passed. It is the mode that best tests the player's deployment and operation level. The reason why we are watching this little red comet is because everyone has just passed the level at most and is still beginning to study this mode. They can't even beat a few levels. As a result, she has already beaten more than 100 levels. And seeing how relaxed she looks, if there were no anti-addiction restrictions, she should be able to beat more levels now. So everyone is looking at the design of the later levels, and referring to her methods, hoping to be as good as her. Because the ranking of the number of levels passed in this endless mode will not only be displayed on the big tree in front of the main entrance, but also that top players every month seem to be able to get some gifts. After listening to the explanation of this passerby boy, Hongdo felt her blood boiling. She was a little worried that the game would become boring after she finished it. But she didn't expect that the designer of the game had thought of this in advance and designed such an interesting mode as the endless mode. She couldn't suppress her excitement and wanted to finish the normal mode quickly, compete with other players, and compete for the rankings. However, she recalled that she couldn't play this game today. The fighting spirit burning in her heart was extinguished instantly, just like being shot by the bullets of the ice shooter. After sighing helplessly, Hongdo felt a little suspicious again. "You have been watching for so long, why haven't you learned it yet?" In her opinion, as long as she learned the opponent's formation and watched a few games of the opponent's handling, she would basically be able to completely copy the opponent's operation. Although she saw that the girl's operation was very fast and accurate, Hongdo felt that as long as she practiced more, she should be able to achieve a similar level. Unexpectedly, the little boy smiled helplessly and said, "I've already said that she is a rare type, and we can't learn her operation." Well, it should be about time. Just when Hongdo wanted to catch the damn riddle man and ask him what he wanted to say, the noise of many onlookers who seemed to know what was going to happen caught Hongdo's attention again. She cast her eyes on the desktop of the game console again, and saw that the large wave of zombies had already covered the sky and encroached on the defense array composed of various plants. Frozen watermelons were flying all over the sky, and the chubby big mushrooms were constantly spitting out poisonous gas to attack the countless zombies in front. The girl's fingers were also flying at high speed, constantly harvesting the lives of zombies with various explosives, and often planting various cheap plants to slow down the speed of the zombies. Although the little girl's operation was quick and accurate, which made Hongdo feel eye-opening, but judging from the situation on the field, she might not be able to hold on for long, and she might collapse at any time and be taken away by the endless zombies. But at this critical moment, the girl's mouth suddenly curled up, and then she crossed her index and middle fingers in front of her chest, and said in a low voice, "Shadow clone technique." Bang! The next moment, two figures that looked exactly like her appeared beside her. They were her shadow clones. Then the two shadow clones and the original body quickly re-entered the game, and 6 small hands quickly flew on the table. With the help of 4 more hands, this formation that required a lot of manual operation finally showed its true strength. One by one, corn shells exploded in the zombie group, blasting large areas of zombies into pieces. For a while, the pressure on the scene was greatly reduced. Seeing that it would be no suspense to pass this level if it continued like this. Hondo finally understood the specialness of this little girl at this time, and also knew why everyone could not directly copy her operation. Because to copy her operation, you have to learn the very difficult shadow clone technique. Is this the world of the strong? Hondo was shocked. I didn't expect that this game could be played like this. Games plus ninjutsu, it sounds like a lot of fun. The crowd around also exclaimed at the right time. Sure enough, it appears again. Shadow clone technique. This is a high-level ninjutsu that is difficult for a Jonin to learn. How can she master such a difficult ninjutsu at such a young age? Who the hell is this girl? Listening to everyone's words of admiration and feeling everyone's envious eyes, the 3 red-haired little girls, although their hands did not stop, had already revealed an irrepressible smile on their faces. Ha! It turns out that coming to this game hall to play games is the right choice. The little girl said proudly in her heart. But she didn't know that in addition to the envious eyes of these little brats, there was also a helpless look staring at her. Kushina, I didn't expect her to fall to this point. Xia Yan, who was also attracted by the excitement not far away, quickly recognized the true identity of this little girl. That was one of Kushina's baby clones. He taught Kushina the baby clone technique to speed up her practice, but he didn't expect that she would use it to show off in front of other children. Is this interesting? Well, actually, it seems quite interesting. Actually, Xia Yan also roughly understood Kushina's idea. Due to the promotion of gaijin cards and the increase in the size of the card pool, this game has gradually matured and formed a stable circle of players. And the combination of various effect cards will even produce chemical reactions that even Xia Yan, the designer, can't imagine. So the current gaijin card battle is no longer like the past, when you can beat others with just a few precious cards. Even Xia Yan, the Jewel King, has encountered several situations where he almost flipped over. Fortunately, he still relied on the gut draw and the bond with the cards to draw the right card to turn defeat into victory. Well, actually he is printing cards. Because he has printed a lot of cards, other players have looked at him with a little strange eyes recently. Even Xia Yan is like this, let alone Kushina. In the Keenan Tavern, apart from fighting against Xia Yan, she was always invincible, but her weakness of not being able to play well was gradually exposed. In addition, Xia Yan and Mito had high requirements for her recently, so she had less time to stay in the tavern to improve her card playing skills, so her ranking began to decline and she had already fallen out of the top 30. Moreover, many players were eyeing her covetously, wanting to score points on her, as if she was a big fat sheep in the Keening world. In order to encourage her to fight, every time she went to the tavern recently, someone would say to her, Kushina, you have a new defeat in Keening cards. So now Kushina even went to the tavern less often, because now she could lose to anyone and she didn't dare to play cards there. She could only ask Uncle Dai to warm up 2 bowls of Coke and ask for a plate of fennel beans. Therefore, it is not difficult to understand that even though there is a wood release versus Zombies game console in the tavern, Kushina would rather let her baby clone come to this game hall for children to play. After all, this baby clone looks like a child, but its wisdom is, well, not much better than a child. However, with the experience gained during the closed beta test, and the dimensionality reduction attack through ninjutsu, this baby clone still won everyone's admiration here. So from these little brats who know nothing, Kushina finally found the joy of being the center of attention. What's even better is that with her dual identity, Kushina can continue to learn the latest routines of master players playing this game from the tavern, and then move them to the children. In this way, she can achieve sustainable pretense without worrying about repeating the same mistakes and being surpassed by the children here. However, Kushina still missed a point. That is, although Xia Yan felt a little pitiful for her for falling to the point of finding confidence in children, Xia Yan still couldn't tolerate her behavior of disrupting the atmosphere of the game hall. After all, the greatest fun of this wood release versus Zombies is to study the matching formations of various plants, and then develop various brain-opening routines. This is also the reason why the prototype of this game has been popular for many years in his previous life. Kushina directly moved the mature and efficient routines from the tavern, which would undoubtedly kill everyone's creativity. Of course, more importantly, this would seriously affect the life of this game. Xia Yan originally wanted to give up, thinking that the current content was enough for everyone to play for a long time. But now that Kushina has done this, doesn't he have to prepare for an update again? You should know that after careful consideration and listening to the opinions of the trial players, Xia Yan decided to delete most of the Krypton Gold content of this game, especially those that would affect the balance. So compared to Plants vs. Zombies 2, the current game is more like the first one. However, considering that everyone has limited time to play every day and their reaction ability is far stronger than that of ordinary people, Xia Yan deliberately increased the difficulty of the endless mode very quickly, so that each level has a clear span and reduces unnecessary levels. Therefore, it is the case that Kushina is worshipped by everyone after reaching more than 100 levels. However, this situation will end today. Xia Yan sighed softly, then raised his hand and snapped his fingers. With a snap. The next moment, the wailing of 3 little Kushina sounded in the crowd. The game screen in front of them had stopped, and 2 blue prompt boxes popped up above the game console. One was, "Game connection interrupted," and the other was, "Dear players, because you have violated the game agreement in the game, your account has been permanently suspended." Chapter 189 The Legend of the Red Comet. Permanent suspension. What does this mean? Does it mean that she will not be allowed to play anymore? Why? Hearing the prompt voice coming from the game console, the children watching began to discuss. "This seems to be called a ban," a child suddenly said. "I heard from my brother that someone in the Bikini Tavern seemed to have been banned for cheating, and will not be able to play that game anymore." What, cheating? No way, did Little Red Comet cheat? Many children found it a little unbelievable. And some children who have always been jealous of Kushina's limelight deliberately made a fuss. No wonder she is so far ahead of us and reached more than 100 levels so quickly. It turns out that she relied on cheating. "I didn't cheat." "Lou, no, it was Kushina who heard everyone's discussion and hurriedly argued loudly." "How could this be? I was just a porter of the game routine, pretending to be cool in front of the children. How could I be banned permanently? This is a fucking black shop." In her heart, Kushina complained about the injustice of the arcade, completely forgetting that her real body was actually one of the owners. Since there was indeed a secret hidden, her defense lacked some confidence and it was difficult for everyone to convince her. So the suspicious eyes became more and more dense, making Kushina feel a little stinging on her skin. Just as she tried to continue to defend herself, a familiar voice suddenly rang in her ears. "Ms. Kushina, the game time is over." Xia Yan. Why is he here? As soon as Kushina heard it, she knew that this was the effect of Xia Yan's sound transmission technique, and she quickly looked around, but she couldn't find his figure. Even so, Kushina still felt a little guilty. At the beginning, in order to let her master the unseal faster, Xia Yan not only often guided her in related knowledge, but also taught her the treasured infant clone technique. As a result, she actually used this trick to play and pretend, which was really a bit wrong, and Kushina also knew that Xia Yan's arcade was originally only for children and did not welcome adults. The purpose is to create a relaxing and enjoyable gaming environment for the children. Therefore, a barrier to break the transformation technique was set up at the entrance of the game hall to prevent adults from sneaking in. And using the shadow clone technique to play games by circumventing the bug was indeed a violation of the rules here, and it was only natural that the account was blocked. Bang, bang. Feeling a little ashamed, Kushina immediately cancelled the shadow clone and did not intend to continue to explain, but prepared to leave directly. Her appearance also made most of the children more convinced that she was actually cheating. Even if there were children who wanted to speak up for her, they had nothing to say when they saw her, and stared blankly at her leaving. Who knew that at this moment, a little boy with white hair suddenly said thoughtfully, "Actually, I have heard that there is a possibility of being blocked by mistake. It seems that this cheating detection system is not as smart as we think. Once the player exceeds that framework envisioned by the designer and does something that the designer can't imagine, he may be mistakenly judged as cheating." Although the voice of the little boy with white hair was not loud, it was clearly heard by everyone, making everyone think about it. Indeed, after all, no one actually found evidence of her cheating, and the boy's remarks, if you think about it carefully, actually make sense. After all, the designer of this game probably didn't think that someone would use the shadow clone technique to play this game, right? So maybe this little red comet was judged as cheating by this game because the frequency of operation exceeded the designer's imagination. Thinking of this, everyone was a little amused, and then there was an inexplicable pleasure in their hearts. It was not directed at the red-haired girl, but at the designer of this game. The villain who invented such a fun game but deliberately used the anti-addiction system to disgust everyone finally suffered a setback from the players. Everyone wanted to see what kind of expression he would have when he knew that the system he designed had banned normal players as cheaters. For a while, the image of little Kushina in everyone's mind changed from a shameful cheater to a tragic genius who broke traditional restrictions but was not understood. It's amazing, it can actually exceed the designer's conception. I knew it. How could the little red comet cheat? Little Kushina, who was originally leaving with her head down, was still a little bit unbelievable after hearing the change in the direction of public opinion. However, after confirming that everyone was really praising her, her originally hesitant face gradually revealed a smile like her motherland. But just when she was about to stop and say a few words, Xia Yan's words rang in her ears again. Keep going forward, don't stop, you know what it means to quit when you were ahead. Although little Kushina didn't quite understand, she still did it out of trust in Xia Yan and continued to walk to the door. So just as Xia Yan said, the little back of little Kushina left without saying a word, which left a deep impression on the children. Because they inexplicably felt that even if the game hall admitted its mistake and unblocked her later, she would probably not appear here again. This little red comet, as its name suggests, appeared in shock, and then left abruptly, leaving only a fiery red legend in this game hall. After a while, the children who were watching gradually dispersed, and at the same time they were still discussing the scene just now. And the white-haired little boy also walked silently behind a tree, and then the one who came out from behind that tree had become Xia Yan himself. Sure enough, boss, you really doted on Kushina. Nono came over from the side, covering her mouth and smiling. Although she didn't know about the baby clone, she had known for so many days that the little red-haired girl was actually Kushina with her intelligence. However, she still thought that Kushina had used Xia Yan's backdoor to break the rules and used the transformation technique to play that game here, so she had always pretended not to see it. But now it seems that Kushina's behavior should be her own decision and has nothing to do with Xia Yan. Xia Yan heard her words and understood what she meant. He finally rescued Kushina, and although she was able to leave a good impression in the hearts of these children, the price was to open Pandora's box, because after learning about Kushina's legend, there must be many people who will no longer play that game according to the rules, but will find ways to break the rules set by him as the designer. With such a group of guys who were always thinking about finding bugs, it is bound to put a lot of pressure on the operation of this game. However, Xia Yan was not worried. He smiled and said, "Isn't this quite interesting? Unlike Keening cards, which is a duel between players, standalone games like Wood Release vs. Zombies can be seen as a duel between players and designers. The more they try to break through the limitations of this game, the more valuable data they can provide me, check for loopholes and make up for deficiencies, so that this game and even my skills will become more perfect. So I am also very much looking forward to how many surprises these players can bring me in this ninja world full of all kinds of strange ninjutsu." Nono also showed an expectant look on her face after hearing Xia Yan's words. However, what she expected was that if one day, those strange ninjutsu are no longer used to kill people, but used in game competitions, what a beautiful world that would be. For a moment, she almost forgot her undercover identity and sincerely wanted to assist Xia Yan and help him realize such a future. However, when she thought of Danzo's instructions, her heart was gloomy again, but she did not show it. She still smiled and looked at Xia Yan, who was still talking. Chapter 190, Hondo's lifelong enemy. And just as the children dispersed, Hondo, who had been acting as a background, was also excited by the red-haired girl's breakthrough of the villain's idea, and she wanted to go down and fight those zombies for 300 rounds. Then she remembered again that she still had no game time today. By the way, if I ask the big sister just now, maybe there is a way to let me play for a while. Hondo, who was itching to play, was unwilling to give up, or maybe she was just procrastinating and didn't want to go home to do her homework. In short, she began to look around, looking for Nono. Not long after, she found Nono next to a big brother in a white coat. "Big sister, my game console is broken, and suddenly I can't play it." As soon as Hondo stepped forward, she complained first, trying to get away with it. But how could her lies at the level of a 5-year-old child be hidden from a walking witch? However, Nono did not expose her little thoughts, but squatted down and said gently, "The game console is not broken, it's just that you have been playing for an hour, so it will stop automatically. Have you forgotten the principle of combining work and rest that I said?" Proper entertainment and relaxation can indeed help improve the efficiency of work and study, but if you only care about playing and put the work aside, isn't that putting the cart before the horse? So my boss, the maker of these game consoles, will add anti-addiction functions to them. Nono said, and stretched out his hand to Xia Yan, indicating to Hondo that this is his boss. Xia Yan also smiled and waved his hand, and greeted the purple-haired girl in front of him. It turns out that this guy is the big villain who designed the anti-addiction system. Why does he look familiar? Hondo looked at the smiling Xia Yan, still muttering in his heart. Ah. She suddenly remembered and pointed at Xia Yan's white hair and said, "You are the white-haired villain who almost stole my tomato beef noodles last time." As she said that, she looked around and found that the other golden-haired villain seemed to be gone today. Xia Yan was stunned for a long time before he remembered what she was talking about. When he met Minato at the Fuinjutsu ramen shop that time, they almost accidentally took the noodles of a purple-haired little girl. Seeing Nono looking at him with a puzzled look, Xia Yan scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "It was just a misunderstanding." As he said that, he touched Hondo's head and said with a smile, "Little sister, you can eat tomato beef noodles casually, but you can't say anything casually." Hondo saw that Xia Yan seemed to be easy to talk to, so she quickly took advantage of the situation and pleaded, "Then boss brother, for the sake of that bowl of tomato beef noodles, can you let me play for a while longer?" Xia Yan laughed a little when he saw this, as if he saw himself begging his parents to let him play on the computer for another half an hour when he was a child in his previous life. The games back then were so fun. Now that I can play them anytime I grow up, they don't seem that fun anymore. It turns out that what you can't get is the best. In order not to deprive the little girl of this experience, Xia Yan decided to reluctantly reject her cute request. "If I can, I would also like to help you, little sister. It's a pity that even as a creator, it would take a lot of time to change the settings in the game console, so I can't help you." Xia Yan, who just snapped his fingers to block Kushina's account, said sincerely. Seeing the girl's face fall, Xia Yan said again, "What do you like to eat the most, little sister?" "Meatballs and red bean soup." Although Hondo was not very happy, she still answered. Xia Yan said, "It's like when you eat meatballs, you shouldn't just eat meatballs, you should also drink some tea to go with it. That way, the meatballs won't get greasy, and the joy of eating delicious food can last longer, don't you think so?" "But," Hondo said strangely, "I usually eat meatballs with red bean soup, double that joy, not greasy at all." "But, you'll get fat that way, right?" "No way." Hondo said proudly, "I can't get fat no matter how much I eat, that's my special ability." Xia Yan was speechless, and felt that this little girl who couldn't eat anything was really a bit difficult to deal with. And why did the combination of meatballs and red bean soup have a sense of jbu? Xia Yan felt that the little girl looked more and more familiar. So he asked, "Little sister, what's your name?" "Hondo." "Mitarashi Hondo. It's you. Hondo, you still dare to say that you can't get fat? Is that sweet potato in Boruto a stand-in actor?" Xia Yan complained in his heart. However, considering Hondo's future fishing nets, he still said, "Hondo, you'll go to school soon, right?" "That's impossible now, but after school starts, there are still ways to get extra game time." Hondo was half happy and half worried when she heard this. After all, when school starts, it will cost money, and there will be less time to play. But since there is an opportunity to play more, she decided not to let it go, so she said, "Then how can I get this extra game time?" Xia Yan smiled and said, "Of course, study hard. Starting from the next semester, the ninja school will implement a point system. Whether it is attendance, class performance, or test scores, it will affect the points obtained each month. And the school will also open a point store. You can exchange points for various things, including this extra time card for the game hall. So if you really want to get extra game time, little sister Hondo, then spend more time on studying and try to get more points." Hondo was a little confused by Xia Yan's words. Why did she want to play games for a while longer, but ended up spending more time on studying? Is the game time gained in this way really meaningful? Unfortunately, Xia Yan seemed to have not seen Hondo's confused expression, and continued to talk about it. And I especially recommend that Hondo spend more energy on the sealing technique, because this subject has many opportunities to gain points. By the way, the person who teaches this course is me. Hondo, whose little brain was already overloaded, took a few steps back when she heard Xia Yan's words, and then looked at Xia Yan with a vigilant face. It turns out that this guy is the culprit for her recent tiredness, that abominable sealing technique teacher. If it weren't for teacher Orokimura who wanted her to join his useless sealing technique research group, she wouldn't have to study sealing technique every day. What shocked Hondo even more was that the white-haired villain who almost had a grudge against her for food, the boss villain who invented the anti-addiction system, and the teacher villain who made her study sealing technique every day, unexpectedly. It turned out to be the same person. The 5-year-old Hondo suddenly found that she had found her lifelong enemy. Hondo's reaction confused Xia Yan and Nono. Xia Yan was about to ask her why she reacted so strongly, but Hondo had already grabbed the shoulder strap of her school bag and turned to run to the gate. "Wait, where are you going?" Xia Yan asked. "I'm going home to do my homework on the seal technique." Hondo turned back while running. Yes, although she had already discovered that Xia Yan was her nemesis, she still had to learn the seal technique that could earn her more points in the next semester. And her enthusiasm for learning the seal technique was even higher than ever before. Xia Yan, who heard Hondo's words, was relieved and smiled with a wise smile. He didn't expect that his points incentive plan would be so effective and make Hondo fall in love with the seal technique so quickly. But wait, he thought of a question the next moment. Hondo hadn't gone to school yet, why did she have the homework on the seal technique? A few days later, in the courtyard of the Senju mansion. Under a towering pomegranate tree, Xia Yan was sitting cross-legged on a futon, his eyes closed, his expression calm, as if he was asleep. Only Mito, Kushina and her infant clones not far away knew how complicated the chakra changes were going on in his body. Because on the stone table next to him, above a flat scroll, a detailed model of the human meridians was floating. The chakra projection represented in blue was like a well-trained army, moving in a complex and orderly manner along the meridian system, as if all the details of the entire meridian system were in place. The chakra in Xia Yan's body was also moving in the same way as this projection. These chakras were generated from cells, then transported through the meridian system, and finally gathered near his forehead. At the same time, part of the chakra continued to transform into runes, and tiny rune spells, like silk threads, were weaving a container for storing chakras, thereby putting other chakras into it. It is not difficult to see that what Xia Yan is currently conducting is actually the first experiment of constructing the Yin Seal, Chapter 191 Yin Seal Phase 2. In the courtyard of the Senju mansion, Xia Yan was still concentrating on constructing the rune formula of the Yin Seal in his body. From the projection of the human meridians above the stone table, it can be seen that the chakra flow in Xia Yan's body and the transformation and connection of the Yin Seal runes are all proceeding in an orderly manner. It seems that there is no big problem. Mito, who has a panoramic view of all this, can't help but feel a lot of emotion in his heart. After all, it was only 2 months ago that he handed the Yin Seal scroll to Xia Yan. Although he has repeatedly improved his evaluation of Xia Yan, he is still surprised that he has officially started the Yin Seal practice so quickly. You know, even if she is called a genius in the seal technique, it took her a long time to reach the threshold of practicing the Yin Seal. Although she also learned about the infant clone technique from Kushina. So she knew that Xia Yan could make such an unreasonable rapid progress and at the same time take into account inventions and creations. The secret of things like schools and taverns. Even for this Yin Seal, Xia Yan actually relied on his infant clone and this special Yin Seal meridian scroll to enter the formal training stage so quickly. However, Mito did not lower his evaluation of Xia Yan because he relied on these external objects, but admired him even more. After all, even Hashirama, who was called the god of ninja, can't actually explain where his unreasonable skills come from, let alone pass them on. So although he could suppress the ninja world during his lifetime, no one disobeyed him. After his death he could only leave an invincible reputation, and no one could inherit his skills. And a genius like Tobirama, although he created many ninjutsu, they were also too high to be understood, and few people could learn them. Perhaps only Xia Yan, who was born in an ordinary family and even had mediocre ninja qualifications, could rely on his intelligence and wisdom to create a universal and stable path that can be passed on. Just like this special Yin Seal meridian scroll in front of you. After Xia Yan's improvement, it can present the flow of chakra when constructing the Yin Seal technique, and even the subtle changes when it is converted into runes. This also means that the Yin Seal practice method that cannot be expressed in words, can only be understood, and needs to be experienced by feeling is a thing of the past. Xia Yan can quickly and intuitively grasp the situation of his own practice at any time through this detailed meridian system diagram, and even fine-tune the root of chakra operation. In fact, after referring to Mito's own Yin Seal chakra operation model, Xia Yan has made certain improvements to the in-seal to make it more suitable for himself. This is also the reason why Xia Yan was able to start in-seal practice so quickly. Because the in-seal is not as simple as a chakra container. When practicing, the rooms transformed into chakra need to be extended along the meridian system to various parts of the body, so as to integrate the chakra of the whole body together, and prepare for various uses after the in-seal is formed in the future. In the past, this kind of operation in the meridians would cause great damage to the meridians if you were not careful, which is also a major difficulty in practicing this technique. Even the thick-skinned Uzumaki clan members need to be proficient in medical ninjutsu and be able to treat themselves at any time before they are qualified to practice formally. However, Xia Yan can reduce the risk of this problem to a very low level through this meridian scroll. In addition, Xia Yan's amazing chakra control ability makes him dare to start practicing in-seal directly after just mastering simple medical ninjutsu. From the current situation, Xia Yan's alternative method should be successful. Moreover, this method is not only for him to use, but also for Kushina and even Tsanad, which will greatly shorten the time required to practice in-seal. Mito once heard Xia Yan say that he wanted to create his own 100 healings technique based on in-seal. There is no doubt that he has taken a very solid step now. Just as Mito was looking at Xia Yan with a look of satisfaction, Xia Yan's practice also went at a critical juncture. All kinds of strange lines began to appear on his body, and then these lines began to spread upwards, and finally gathered on his forehead, forming a purple diamond mark. Then, both the lines and the diamond mark slowly disappeared, as if they had never existed. Mito finally put aside his last bit of worry and smiled with satisfaction. It's done. After letting out a breath, Xia Yan slowly opened his eyes. Xia Yan, you're amazing. You succeeded in one go. Yes, our original bodies are far behind. We haven't learned it for so long. Several little Kushina were the first to run over with cheers, chirping and talking around Xia Yan. Kushina, who had been following happily, suddenly froze after hearing what her clone said. It's true that she has been learning in-seal for a longer time than Xia Yan, but she is still at the stage of learning medical ninjutsu. Although with the help of the Meridian Scroll, the requirements for medical ninjutsu attainments in practicing this technique have been reduced a lot, but she can't be completely ignorant. Moreover, Kushina, who has a very large amount of chakra, is also much inferior to Xia Yan in chakra control. She still needs to strengthen her training in that area to meet the requirements for formal practice of in-seal. Although she knew that what her clone said was true, Kushina still said with an unconvinced look on her face, HMPH, just wait and see. After I practice the in-seal, I will definitely catch up with Xia Yan soon. Mito glanced at Kushina, who was fighting with her clone with a bad temper, and then cast his eyes on Xia Yan, who was surrounded by the little Kushina, and said, actually, what Kushina said is not unreasonable, Xia Yan. Although Xia Yan, you have already constructed the in-seal technique in your body, you can't take it lightly. After all, this second stage of practice is even more difficult than the first stage. Xia Yan, who stood up and got rid of the entanglement of the little Kushina, also nodded slowly to show his agreement. Although the technique pattern on his body just now seemed to have disappeared, it was actually still running in his body. The second stage of practice is the accumulation of chakra, which requires the operation of this in-seal technique to be maintained all the time, and at the same time, chakra must be continuously injected into it. If the first stage of training is to create a container for chakra, then the second stage is to fill the container with chakra. In a sense, this is actually very similar to the idea of the Jinchuriki using his body to seal the tailed beast. It's just that the in-seal seals the chakra of the body itself. And because it is necessary to continuously inject chakra into the container, the in-seal is not like ordinary seals that can operate automatically once it is generated. The practitioner needs to be distracted every moment to maintain the operation of the in-seal technique. This is also the difficulty of the second stage of training, because once the distraction is not maintained, all the previous efforts will be wasted and it will be necessary to start from the beginning. Therefore, whether eating, sleeping or fighting, the practitioner must be distracted to maintain the existence of the in-seal. Until a chakra is filled and the purple diamond mark is completely formed, the in-seal technique is considered complete and can operate automatically. Moreover, this technique adopts the form of zero deposit and lump sum withdrawal. As long as it is not fully formed, it is impossible to temporarily take out the chakra for use. Because of such harsh conditions, although the in-seal is very powerful, it is a secret technique that only a few people can learn. Not to mention that Xia Yan has a big shortcoming in the practice of each stage. That is his always meager chakra supply. Originally, in the infant clone and various research activities, he had already used up all his chakra every day without hurting his body, and he wanted to use one chakra as two. Now there is the Seal, a big user, which makes his chakra supply even worse. Even Mito couldn't help asking again. Xia Yan, are you sure you still want to follow your previous idea and only allocate so little chakra to the Seal every day? At this rate, it will probably take you more than 10 years to fill the Seal. Mito's view is already very optimistic. After all, under such conditions where all previous efforts will be wasted if you relax, the longer you delay, the higher the chance of accidents. Moreover, as the amount of chakra in the Seal increases, the chakra and energy required to maintain the technique will continue to increase, and the requirements for the chakra control of the practitioner will continue to increase, so the idea of a long-term battle is very undesirable. However, Xia Yan did not intend to spend more than 10 years to learn this technique. Now symbolically injecting chakra into the Seal to maintain its operation is just to train himself. So he just smiled and said, "It's okay, teacher. For this stage of practice, I actually have some ideas." This time Mito was able to guess Xia Yan's interruption. Since relying on one's own chakra is too slow, it is natural to think of a way to absorb chakra from the outside world. The most direct way is naturally to add a chakra source in the body, such as a tailed beast. However, unless a reconciliation is reached with the tailed beast, otherwise under the interference of the tailed beast, it is likely that the Seal will never be formed. Otherwise, although it is very rare, there has always been a rumor in the ninja world that there is a secret technique that can absorb chakra. Unfortunately, for Mito, who was born in the Uzumaki clan and married into the Senju clan, she naturally didn't need to say much, and even the people around her had never encountered a situation where chakra was insufficient. People with less than 10 cards of chakra were embarrassed to greet others. So she didn't have this secret technique to absorb chakra. So Mito stroked her cheek and said sadly, "It's a pity that our clan members have been scattered everywhere, otherwise maybe we can provide you with some help." Chapter 192 Mito-sensei's request. Xia Yan was thoughtful after hearing this. Although the teacher did not say what kind of help it was, Xia Yan could probably guess that she was referring to some of the special members of the Uzumaki clan. They can pass their chakra to others through being bitten, and they can also heal wounds. In the original work, Karen used this ability to save Sasuke from near death several times, who was always beaten up on a whim. Perhaps it was because of her ability that Sasuke became more and more reckless, and the beatings became more and more severe. From this perspective, the two are actually quite a match. At this point in time, the only one who clearly possessed this ability was Karen's mother. This ability is very good in terms of chakra transmission efficiency and quality. Even if Xia Yan does not obtain chakra in this way, he can still get a lot of valuable gains by studying this ability. However, this method may not work for the time being. Because Xia Yan, who has always been trapped in his own chakra amount, how could he not have thought of using such power? When he was still running around in the Land of Fire to work on the Seal class, whenever he was close to the Land of Grass, he would go to the hidden grass village in the name of buying talisman paper, trying to find the whereabouts of Karen's mother. The result was naturally nothing. I don't know if the grass ninja hid her too well, or if she hasn't fallen into the hands of the grass ninja yet, or if it was because of my own butterfly effect that she didn't appear there, but it's been almost a year since I went to the hidden grass village. Maybe I can find a way to find out and see if there is anything I can gain. Xia Yan secretly took note of this matter and began to discuss the experience of constructing the Seal technique with teacher Mito to see if there is anything that can be improved. After a long time, Kushina heard Xia Yan and Grandma Mito discussing the various details of the Seal, and always felt as if they were showing off to her, so she ran to the side to practice angrily. And the few little Kushinas, seeing that there was no good show to watch, also returned to the study and started their own learning tasks. After Xia Yan and Mito finished discussing the training matters of the Seal, they moved on to the next important topic. Teacher Mito, do you have any knowledge about the Seal? Yes, the first person Xia Yan had identified as the person who could help him learn more about the Seal was actually his teacher. Although Orochimaru should have a lot of relevant knowledge, considering that he and the other party were not very familiar with each other, and that Orochimaru and Danzo seemed to have an affair now, so unless it was necessary, he would not reveal a secret weapon to deal with Danzo to Orochimaru. With no other choice, Xia Yan could only ask his teacher for help. As for why he did not cling to the teacher's thigh at the beginning, it was naturally because the Seal had a very bad reputation in the field of sealing. This kind of evil technique that can silently turn others into slaves and cannot resist has been a very feared existence since ancient times. Sure enough, when Mito heard Xia Yan's words, his eyebrows were deeply frowned. Xia Yan, what's the point of learning this kind of thing? His tone did not hide his disgust for the seal. Xia Yan could imagine that if he gave an inappropriate answer to the next sentence, the teacher's favorability towards him would probably drop significantly. So he didn't tell the teacher any nonsense like there is no good or bad technique, but directly told the teacher. Teacher, have you heard of the walking shrine maiden? In the following time, Xia Yan told the teacher about Nano's situation in general, and emphasized the fact that she still had the curse seal technique. I didn't expect that the walking shrine maiden who has been famous in the ninja world in recent years is now working in your tavern, Xia Yan. Mito was not surprised that Danzo used the curse seal to control his subordinates, but just felt a little powerless. It seems that Danzo has probably guessed my situation, she smiled bitterly and said, so he planned to let the walking shrine maiden lurk beside you, Xia Yan, and wait until I die, and then attack you, Xia Yan. She just complained in her heart that Hashirama was invincible when he was alive, but powerless after death, but she didn't expect that she was actually the same. He hasn't died yet, but someone has already sharpened his knife and targeted his disciple. Xia Yan, who had the same idea as Mito, didn't want to continue to dwell on this heavy topic, so he continued. So I used the game console to continuously collect Nano's chakra, and tried to study the curse seal formula contained in it, intending to find a way to break it. Mito finally breathed a sigh of relief when she learned that Xia Yan wanted to learn the knowledge of the curse seal only for self-protection. What she was most worried about was that ninjutsu geniuses like Xia Yan, Tobirama, and Orochimaru would always involuntarily explore the forbidden area. Fortunately, Xia Yan hasn't reached that step yet, but Mito immediately thought of another question, and his expression gradually became strange. So, Xia Yan, you were so nice to the walking priestess just to get her chakra, not because you like her big breasts? Then why did Kushina study the seal every day these days and drink 2 large bottles of milk every day? When Xia Yan heard what teacher Mito said, he almost choked on his saliva. Who is it? Who is slandering me in front of you, teacher? Xia Yan said in a rare moment of loss of composure, while staring at Kushina not far away with a vicious look. After all, the biggest suspect is this guy. Mito was also amused to see Xia Yan's big reaction, so he pretended to be curious and asked. So Xia Yan, you don't like big breasts? Xia Yan wanted to say something but stopped, and finally could only smile bigly. Teacher, can we not talk about this topic? It seems that Kushina still can't stop drinking 2 large bottles of milk every day, Mito muttered in his heart when he saw this. And she has been working so hard to learn the seal recently, so it's better not to tell her about this for the time being. Then she pondered and said, I understand what you mean, Xia Yan, from what you said, the child named Nano is indeed worth helping. But Xia Yan, you should also know what it means to break Danzo's curse. Mito looked at Xia Yan deeply, then sighed and said, just like light and shadow, in order to maintain the operation of a ninja village, in addition to new ninjas like you who live under the sun, traditional ninjas who bear the darkness of the village are also needed, and this is why I and Monkey will repeatedly tolerate Danzo. Seeing Xia Yan's hesitant expression, Mito smiled and said, don't worry, I didn't stop your plan, Xia Yan. Originally, I thought that Danzo could retire from that position after the 4th Hokage took office. But since Danzo has repeatedly used his methods on his companions in the village, he is no longer suitable for the role of carrying the darkness of the village. But, Xia Yan, do you have the determination to solve Danzo even if you have to bear the darkness of the village? Xia Yan was speechless for a moment. He also understood what the teacher meant. Although what she said was a bit mysterious, it was actually nothing to say. Danzo's role was like the cruel official or treacherous minister in his previous life, responsible for helping the emperor do all kinds of things that were not worthy at being on the table, so as to keep the emperor's bright and upright side. It gives people the illusion that the emperor is good, and it's all the fault of the treacherous ministers. In fact, even in the era of Boruto, Naruto, who has become a saint, still has Sasuke outside the village and Sai in the village to deal with those things that are not worthy at being seen in the light. There is no change at all. And under normal circumstances, when the new emperor ascends the throne, these guys can be pulled out and killed, and a wave of reputation can be earned, achieving the effect of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. It's a pity that what teacher Mito didn't know was that the 4th generation Hokage, whom she had high expectations for, died not long after taking office, and had not even reached this process. and the third generation who took office again later, probably because of nostalgia, or because he was used to it, also did not deal with Danzo, which eventually made him too big to be removed, and eventually made the whole Konoha stain with his haze. So from what the teacher said, it seemed that he was asking me if I was willing to replace Danzo and shoulder the darkness of the village. A scene subconsciously emerged in Xia Yan's mind. In the Okage's office, Minato slammed the table and said angrily, "Remember, I'm the Okage." And he replied with a gloomy face, "Minato, you will regret it." Then he slammed the door and left. Ohi and Minato dueled in the Valley of the End. With win to become Okage, lose to marry Kushina as the bet, fighting for 300 rounds. Thinking of these scenes, Xia Yan couldn't help but shudder and felt a chill. Forget it, it's better not to bear this darkness, otherwise it always feels like I have got the villain's script. When the time comes, I'll just pack up and hand this burden to Fuku. Thinking of this, Xia Yan finally breathed a sigh of relief. Sure enough, it's better for me to continue this promising job as a teacher. Mito, who had been paying attention to Xia Yan's expression throughout the whole process, already knew Xia Yan's answer. So she also smiled a little relieved. Since Xia Yan was able to get rid of the temptation to become the Dark of Konoha, she didn't have to worry too much about Xia Yan going astray. So she finally felt relief to let Xia Yan continue his research on the cursed seal, and slowly said, "I haven't done much research on the cursed seal, but there are indeed a few books that record related content. You can refer to them, Xia Yan." Xia Yan was overjoyed when he heard this. He finally saw the dawn of breaking the cursed seal. Unexpectedly, Mr. Mito suddenly changed the subject and said, "But before that, there is something I hope you can help me with, Xia Yan." Xia Yan was slightly stunned. He really couldn't think of what else Mr. Mito needed his help with. Then he heard the teacher sigh slightly and said, "Xia Yan, I hope you can take advantage of this holiday to help me find Tsunade. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 193 The Runaway Princess of Konoha. Tsunade, full name, Tsunade. She is the granddaughter of the first Hokage, the niece of the second Hokage, the disciple of the third Hokage, the sweetheart of the future fourth Hokage, and even the fifth Hokage. Apart from the future Prince Naruto, she is the strongest relative in Konoha. However, Tsunade has become self-destructive due to the deaths of her younger brother Nawase and her lover Kato Dan in the Second Ninja World War. She has been lingering in gambling houses all over the Land of Fire, trying to numb herself with gambling. Xia Yan sorted out the information about Tsunade in his mind. As for why teacher Mito entrusted him to find Tsunade, the reason is not difficult to guess. After all, the teacher had said before that he didn't have much time left, so it was human nature to want to spend more time with his only relative. Xia Yan, who realized this, couldn't help but feel a little heavy in his heart, and felt more and more that the teacher was about to leave. So Xia Yan also said to Mito with a serious face, "Teacher, don't worry, I will bring Lady Tsunade back soon." Mito was stunned when she saw Xia Yan's look, and then she knew that he seemed to have misunderstood something. She smiled helplessly and said, "Xia Yan, don't act like I'm about to die, I can still hold on for a while. I want you to find Tsunade for another reason." In Xia Yan's puzzled eyes, Mito seemed to suppress her anger, took out a thick stack of papers from her arms and slapped them on the table. Xia Yan picked up a few of them and checked them, and then found that all of them on the table were ice, and the amount was not small. Could it be that? Mito continued to say with great sorrow. "Xia Yan, you may not know that Tsunade has been very similar to her grandfather since she was young. Not only is she just as addicted to gambling, but her luck in gambling is just as bad. Even now, I heard that many gamblers have called her fat sheep." Mito sighed and said, "But unlike Hashirama, my granddaughter is not a good gambler. She will walk away after owing a lot of debts to a place. I didn't know about this at first, but recently those creditors seem to have known her identity and have come to the Senju clan with ice to collect debts. If this continues, I'm afraid that before I die, the entire Senju clan's family business will be ruined by her. Xia Yan, what do you think? Can I not find someone to catch her back?" Hectares, Hachi. At the same time, at the door of a gambling house somewhere in the Land of Fire, Tsunade, who had just lifted the curtain and walked out of the gambling house, suddenly sneezed loudly. She had messy blonde hair and looked unkempt. She also had 2 obvious dark circles under her eyes. It seemed that she had been gambling all night. After wiping her nose with the back of her index finger, she muttered quietly, "Do you have a cold? This is rare. After all, I have never had a cold in my life. But it seems that I still need to find a hotel to have a good sleep first." After walking forward a few steps in a random direction, she remembered that she seemed to have forgotten something. She turned back and urged, "Xia, why are you still dawdling? If you don't hurry up, I will abandon you. Sama, wait for me." A young black-haired girl was dragging a large suitcase behind Sama and said anxiously. As she spoke, she lifted the suitcase with force and quickened her pace to run towards Sama, as if she was afraid that the other party would really abandon her. But after a few seconds, she ran out of strength and the suitcase fell to the ground again, leaving a trail on the ground. Although the box was very heavy, Xia's mood was heavier than the box. After all, she knew that it was not filled with money, but with ice. Why did the gentle and generous Sama become like this now? Although she also knew that Sama also liked gambling before, she had never indulged in it to this extent. Sure enough, it was because of her brother and Uncle Juan. Xia sighed slightly in her heart. She was very happy when she received a letter from Sama saying that she would give her lessons during the holidays. Unexpectedly, during this period of time, all she did was help Sama carry the suitcase and wander around in gambling houses everywhere. Her knowledge of medical ninjutsu did not improve much, but she did master a lot of various gambling methods and the tricks of gambling houses everywhere. It feels like useless knowledge has increased again. I don't know, and Sama can return to her previous state. Xia, who was dragging the suitcase with some effort while thinking about something else, suddenly felt her hand lighten, and the whole suitcase was taken away. She looked up quickly and found that it was Sama who had come back without her knowing. She lifted the heavy suitcase easily and said with a look of disgust, "It seems that the teaching level of the ninja school has declined greatly recently. How can you not even carry a piece of luggage properly? When I win money one day and need you to help me carry the box with money, can I still count on you?" "First of all, Sama, your assumption is impossible to happen," Xia complained in her heart. Because during this period of time, she had witnessed Sama's bad gambling luck. But she was still a little relieved. Sure enough, no matter how she changed on the surface, Sama was still the same Sama. "Xia, you don't have enough strength because you eat too little. Yoshi, let's find a restaurant to eat first." Xia, who was also starving, showed a happy expression on her face when she heard it. But her smile soon disappeared, and she said with a bitter face, "But Sama, just now you have lost our last penny." Sure enough, just like what the teacher taught in the ninja school, gambling is really terrible. What do you know? High risk and high return. This is the essence of gambling. No, Sama, you only have high risk, but no high return. It's no different from pouring money into the sea. Xia complained in her heart again, but still didn't dare to say it out loud. Who knew that Sama suddenly took out a thick envelope from the four-dimensional pocket on her chest and patted it in her hand, and smiled at Xia. "And don't worry, I still have money here. You fell asleep just now so you didn't know. I borrowed some money from Uncle Ryoma, and there will be no problem to deal with food and accommodation for the next few days." But Xia didn't feel relieved because of this, instead her brows frowned even tighter. "It's that old man Ryoma again." Xia hesitated. Sama, don't you find it strange? We always meet this old man in gambling houses everywhere, and he is always willing to lend you money and has never asked you for debt. Sama said indifferently. "What's so strange about this? Maybe Uncle Ryoma is also on his way to the gambling houses in the Land of Fire, but our route overlaps a little. And I heard him say that he seemed to know Grandpa before, so isn't it normal to lend me money? As for not having to pay me back, it's naturally because he saw my talent for gambling and knew that one day I would win back all the money I lost, so he is not worried at all. Why does Sama always have a mysterious confidence when it comes to gambling? What gives her this courage?" Xia looked helpless, thought about it, and wanted to persuade Sama to be careful. Sama, but before she finished speaking, she was interrupted by Sama's sudden words. "Xia." "Yes." Xia responded in confusion. "Xia." "Yes," Xia responded helplessly. Sama breathed a sigh of relief when she saw Xia finally calm down. She struggled forward with her suitcase, saying, "Since we have money today, let's eat something better. I heard that there is a Chinese restaurant nearby, and the roast suckling pig there is very famous." "Yoshi, then let's eat roast suckling pig today." Many thanks to book friend 15102914394 2,299 for the 500 reward. Many thanks to Book Friend Spada for the 500 reward. Chapter 194 Kakashi's Request. So teacher, what you said about capturing Lady Tsunade is not an exaggeration. The camera returned to the Senju mansion, and Xia Yan was still confirming with a hesitant look on his face. Mito smiled sinisterly and said, of course it means literally. That is to say, no matter what means you use, even if you use force, as long as you bring Tsunade back to me, you'll complete the mission. Xia Yan wiped his sweat and said, Mito-sama, is it necessary to go to this extent? Mito's smile faded when he heard this, and then he sighed deeply and said, in fact, Tsunade is probably still blaming herself for the death of Nawaki, thinking that she didn't take good care of her brother, so she has never been ashamed to come to see me. If you don't use tougher means, then I'm afraid that the child may have to wait until the day I died before she comes back to see me for the last time. As she said this, she suddenly had an idea and said, by the way, if Xia Yan really has no other choice at the time, then tell Tsunade that I'm dying. Xia Yan, who had a heavy expression, was speechless again. If Tsunade comes back and sees you, the teacher, alive and kicking, then the first person to die may be me. He complained in his heart. However, Xia Yan also understood what Mito meant, so he nodded and said, teacher, don't worry. No matter what method I use, I will definitely bring Tsunade back. What? Xia Yan, are you going to find Tsunade? At this moment, Kushina's voice sounded behind Xia Yan. It turned out that just now, Kushina was tired and practicing and planned to come here to rest, and she happened to hear Xia Yan's words. Being heard by this little girl, this is a big troublesome. Xia Yan thought to himself, and then looked back with a headache. I saw Kushina clenching her fists in front of her chest with excitement and said, great, it happens that I missed Tsunade too, so let's go find her together. Xia Yan slightly supported his forehead, and Mito smiled bitterly and shook his head. Because seeing that the nine-tailed Jinkaraki's succession ceremony will be held soon, how could the village let Kushina leave now? But looking at Kushina's excited look, Xia Yan knew that a simple refusal would not convince her to stay. So he stood up, waved to Kushina and said, Kushina, come here. Kushina didn't understand why, but she did it anyway. As soon as she approached Xia Yan, she was poked on the forehead by Xia Yan's raised finger. Forgive me, Kushina, maybe next time. Xia Yan showed a slightly apologetic smile. However, the next moment, his charming smile was distorted by the pain from his ribs. Just talk, why did you suddenly poke my forehead? It hurts. Kushina, who had just elbowed Xia Yan, blushed slightly, but on the surface she was angry. Xia Yan, who took a few steps back and sat back in his seat while holding his ribs, felt a little doubtful about his life. It's different from what we agreed. Why is his forehead poke not as effective as that of Weasel and Nisha? Is it because his last name is not Upja? Fortunately, Kushina touched her forehead and said proudly, but since you said so, then okay, but next time you must accompany me out of the village to play. It turned out that it was not that there was no effect, but there was a little network delay. Maybe this is related to the brain speed of the person who was infected. Xia Yan was doing a rigorous scientific analysis in his mind, but on the surface he nodded seriously and said, no problem, next time for sure. Although he accepted the commission from Mr. Mito, Xia Yan did not plan to leave immediately. After all, the Fire Country is not big, but it is not small either. It is like looking for a needle in a haystack to find Tsunade, who often changes her appearance to escape debt. If you look around like a headless fly, you may not be able to find Tsunade by the end of the holiday. So Xia Yan's first step is to collect information, for example, to see if the ninjas who have recently left the village for missions have witnessed Tsunade's figure. And this job does not even need Xia Yan to do it himself, but is directly outsourced to two tools he is used to, Mr. Ikapu and Kushina. While waiting for their news, Xia Yan was not idle. Because he didn't know how long he would be away, he had to arrange some affairs in the village after he left. It seemed that he had to stop research for a while. After all, he couldn't let his infant clone exist for a long time. As for school, since it was still vacation, there was no need to worry, as long as he came back before the vacation was over. As for the tavern, Xia Yan didn't dare to leave it completely to Nono, because he was worried that when he came back, it would have become Shinyo's place. So he asked Mito, the only teacher who knew Nono's inside story, to take care of it for a while. Mito was also very interested in the legendary walking shrine maiden, so she was very happy to take the job. After arranging these things, Xia Yan could only wait. A few days passed like this. Xia Yan had found a lot of eyewitness information about Summit from the information he collected from Maikaku and Koshina. Obviously, Summit was more high profile than he thought, and she didn't change her appearance all the time to escape debt. However, it seems that there are more than one blonde wavy woman in the ninja world, so Xia Yan couldn't figure out the real Summit's whereabouts for a while. Fortunately, he noticed another piece of information, that is, in some eyewitness intelligence of blonde wavy women, the other party was followed by a little girl with black hair. So Xia Yan went to the clan of the Kato family again, and after learning that Shishin was no longer there, he was almost sure of Summit's location. According to the location analysis of the eyewitness intelligence, the other party's next stop is the Holy Land of Gamblers, Tancho Street. After confirming Summit's location, Xia Yan also prepared to set off to carry out the task of arresting Summit. Mission code: Operation Grey Wolf. But before that, he still has one thing to do. In the living room of the Hitaki clan's mansion, Xia Yan sat cross-legged in front of a low table, correcting a test paper. Kakashi was kneeling beside him, holding a book and reading, and he didn't seem to worry about the result of his test paper at all. It was obvious that he was not overconfident. Xia Yan corrected the test paper in a few seconds and wrote a big 100 inches the score column of the test paper. "You're indeed a genius who can graduate at the age of 5. Xia Yan smiled and handed the test paper to Kakashi, praising him at the same time. "Although you have learned part of it by yourself, it is really amazing that you have mastered the content I taught for a semester so quickly." Kakashi put down his book, took the test paper, just glanced at it, and then put it on the table again. He did not react much to Xia Yan's praise, probably because he was tired of hearing such words. However, he still admired Xia Yan's attainments in sealing techniques. And Kakashi was very grateful that he was willing to tutor him, a graduate, during the holidays. So he remained kneeling with his hands on his knees, bowed to Xia Yan and said, "This is all thanks to your teaching, teacher." "Thank you." Xia Yan waved his hand and smiled, "You're welcome. Kakashi, maybe I will not be able to understand this until you become a teacher in the future. For a teacher, it is actually a very pleasant thing to teach a genius student who can understand things quickly. Just remember not to be too partial to good students in the future." Although Kakashi was a little confused, he still nodded to show that he understood. Then Xia Yan thought for a moment and said, "Since you have no problem with your grades, and you have roughly mastered the radio gymnastics used to exercise the meridians, and you have also started to practice the projection technique, so by the time school starts, Kakashi, your progress should be similar to everyone else's, and you may even be ahead. Then our tutoring can come to an end. It just so happens that I have a mission that I need to go out of the village to carry out, and I will be away from Konoha for a while. By the way, if you see Obito and the others, please notify them for me, and remind them not to slack off." After Xia Yan finished his instructions, Kakashi did not agree directly. When he heard that teacher Xia Yan had a mission, his expression under the mask changed. After struggling for a while, he gritted his teeth and said, "Teacher, I wonder if you still need manpower for your mission. Look, do I still have a chance?" Chapter 195 Problem Child. Xia Yan was slightly stunned when he heard Kakashi's sudden request. Because compared to Kakashi, this request was more like what Obito would ask. Could it be that Kakashi was tired of those tasks of hatching cats and weeding, so he suddenly wanted to participate in his own task? Xia Yan muttered to himself, then put on the attitude of a teacher and said earnestly, "Kakashi, you just graduated. The most important thing now is to follow that guidance of the Genin and learn how to become a qualified Genin. I know those D-level tasks are not difficult for you, but these tasks are actually for you and your classmates to run in and develop tacit understanding, not just a waste of time." However, before Xia Yan finished speaking, Kakashi seemed to have expected it, and said calmly, "Teacher, in fact, I have already quit the Genin class a long time ago." Kakashi's words made Xia Yan swallow all the long speeches he had prepared, and then he looked at Kakashi with a headache and said, "It's only been a short time, why did you quit the Genin class on your own?" Kakashi still said in a flat tone, "Because even if I don't quit, they will probably expel me after a while. In this case, I might as well quit early. It's a good thing for both parties." So then, Kakashi continued to narrate his recent experiences in a calm tone. "Actually, it's not a big deal. It's just that Kakashi, who is still stuck in a dead end, doesn't get along with his teacher and teammates. Because Kakashi's level is much higher than that of ordinary graduates, he was not assigned to a class with other graduates when he graduated, but was directly assigned to a senior Genin class. Perhaps the Sandmi's original intention was to let the more experienced ones take care of the overly young Kakashi. But in fact, unlike the newly established genin class, the members of this genin class, which has been established for a while, already know each other well. So Kakashi, who just arrived, is like a stranger and it's difficult for him to integrate into their small group. Coupled with the age gap and the extreme mission first idea, Kakashi soon had a lot of friction with his teammates. Although everyone seemed to be willing to accommodate him because of his age, Kakashi, who felt that there was a big gap in everyone's ideas, simply applied to leave the team not long ago. So now that he hasn't found a new team yet and is working alone, he asked Xia Yan to join the mission. After listening to Kakashi's narration, Xia Yan couldn't help but sigh. I almost forgot that this guy is still a problem child. Xia Yan also vaguely remembered that Kakashi also had such a period of being obsessed with things in the original work. If nothing unexpected happens, he will join a team like this for a few years, and then leave the team for various reasons. It will not stop until his destined teammates, Obito and Rin, graduate and form a genin team under Minato. It can be seen that although Kakashi seems to have changed a little after the battle with Obito, and even joined the sealing technique research team. However, the knot brought to him by the death of White Fang is far from being untied, so these things still cannot be avoided. Seeing the teacher sighing, Kakashi couldn't help but feel tight in his heart. Although he was happy when he quit the team, he soon regretted it after quitting the team. Because when he went to the mission hall alone to accept the mission, he found a big problem. That is, except for the simplest missions, no one was willing to hire him. After all, even if he is a 5-year-old genin, he is still a 5-year-old genin after all. Seeing his childish appearance, it is hard to be at ease. No matter how unparalleled a genius he is, those clients cannot entrust a 5-year-old kid with tasks that concern their lives and property. It would be fine if he had some achievements, but all he has done are those simple D-level tasks, so Kakashi has fallen into a vicious circle recently. If you want to receive a task, you must first make achievements. If you want to make achievements, you must first receive a task. As if he was stuck in an RPG, Kakashi felt that he seemed to be getting further and further away from the goal of revitalizing the family's reputation. So he seemed calm on the surface, but he was actually anxious in his heart. After hearing that Teacher Xia Yan had a task, he couldn't wait to promote himself. Teacher Xia Yan, I know my request is a bit presumptuous. But I am really sincere, I don't need any mission rewards, I will bring my own dry food, and even the chores along the way can be entrusted to me, so please consider it. Kakashi looked up at Xia Yan, with a rare pleading look in his eyes. Cheer up, 6th generation. Seeing the always indifferent Kakashi so humble, Xia Yan felt a little uncomfortable. At the same time, he used the camera to record his expression as a souvenir. Black material is in hand. Kakashi suddenly felt a chill from his back, but he didn't know where this feeling came from. But then he saw Teacher Xia Yan touching his chin and thinking carefully, and his heart suddenly tightened, and he forgot the inexplicable chill. After a nervous wait, Kakashi heard Teacher Xia Yan slowly say, "Since Kakashi insists so much, then okay. Anyway, this mission shouldn't be too dangerous." Great. After getting a clear answer from Teacher Xia Yan, Kakashi couldn't help but clench his fists and calm down his excitement. Finally, he could open the business. And he was going on a mission with an experienced ninja like Teacher Xia Yan. Then Xia Yan said, "If you don't have anything else to do, Kakashi, you can go pack your luggage, because I will be leaving soon." Yes. Kakashi didn't dare to dawdle after hearing this, for fear that the teacher would change his mind, and he quickly got up and prepared to pack his luggage. Because different things need to be carried for different tasks, Kakashi realized a problem at this time. He stopped and asked, "By the way, teacher, I wonder what the level and specific content of our mission this time is?" Xia Yan seemed to be waiting for Kakashi to ask this question, and replied with a smile. S-level mission, the plan to capture summoned some map. Half an hour later, Xia Yan and Kakashi, who was carrying a bag, were already walking on the streets of Konoha, heading towards the gate of Konoha. Just now, he had taken Kakashi to the Okage building to register and add Kakashi's name to this mission. Yes, I don't know if it was out of his usual bad taste or he wanted to increase his mission count, but Teacher Mito actually spent money to publish this S-level mission at the mission center. As a formal Konoha ninja, Kakashi could not leave Konoha at all without a mission or report, otherwise he might be treated as a traitor, so Xia Yan had to take him there. The 3rd generation shadow clone, who always sat in the mission center of the Okage building, was also quite surprised when he learned that Kakashi was also going to participate in this mission. However, it was similar to Xia Yan's thoughts. He didn't think this mission was too dangerous. In addition, with Xia Yan, a skilled technician, leading him, he let it go easily. Although he had left the Okage building for a long time, Kakashi still looked unbelievable. When he heard Teacher Xia Yan talk about the content of the mission before, he thought it was a joke. Unexpectedly, it was true. So why did he jump to the S-level mission when he was still doing a D-level mission? Isn't this a huge difficulty? Even he, who was always confident, is a little worried whether he can handle this task. And what is this summoned capture operation? Is this summoned the summoned summon he knows? And is this word capture also the usage he usually knows? Why is summoned summon one of the 3 ninjas, wanted by Konoha? Even Kakashi, who never likes to read novels, can't help but imagine a lot of twists and turns in his mind. I always feel like I accidentally got involved in something very incredible. But considering his own predicament, Kakashi finally gritted his teeth and signed his name on the mission book. Although he has made up his mind, Kakashi still looks worried. The name of the 3 ninjas is too loud. Even the man praises them. Can Teacher Xia Yan and himself, who was a gift, really capture summoned summon? Even Kakashi began to wonder if Natsuhiko had offended someone and was sent on this suicide mission, just as Natsuhiko, who looked relaxed, and Kakashi, who was doubting his life, walked to the gate of Konoha. They unexpectedly ran into a guy they were both very familiar with. Obito. Chapter 196. Camping. Teacher Xia Yan, how can it be such a coincidence? This must be the fate arranged by the Six-Path Sage. Obito, who saw Xia Yan from afar and waved his hand and ran over, said loudly as if he was spreading honey on his mouth. After all, after getting the ultimate shuriken that was obviously secretly given by Teacher Xia Yan and destroying the giant snake, Obito's admiration for the teacher became stronger. The idea of wanting to truly worship Teacher Xia Yan as a teacher also rose again. So it's no wonder that he was so excited to meet Teacher Xia Yan this time. However, his excitement did not last long, because when he ran over, he saw Kakashi following behind Teacher Xia Yan. How unfortunate, Kakashi were here too. It's really unlucky. Obito looked like he had eaten shit-flavored chocolate. So is this meeting a coincidence or a coincidence? Xia Yan complained in his heart, and then casually greeted Obito. Kakashi restrained his expression and snorted lightly as a greeting. Obito made a face at Kakashi and asked curiously, "Teacher, are you going out of the village for something?" "Yes." Xia Yan rubbed Obito's head and said, "And I will probably be out for a while, so Obito, remember to notify everyone for me, so that everyone can't relax because of this." "Oh." Obito patted his chest and said, "I will definitely notify everyone." After saying that, he didn't dare to delay that teacher's time and prepared to say goodbye to the teacher. But at this moment, he found that Kakashi actually had a big bag on his back, and it was obvious that he was also going on a long journey. Could it be? Wait, teacher, is Kakashi going with you too? Obito said in disbelief. That's true. Xia Yan explained, actually, I was leaving the village to carry out a mission, and Kakashi happened to be free, so I asked him to help. Obito immediately said anxiously, Teacher, I can help too, wait for me, I'm going home to pack my luggage now. Unfortunately, Xia Yan immediately rejected Obito mercilessly. No, because this mission doesn't require so many people. And Obito, you are just a ninja school student. If I take you out to do a mission, Okage by Waiko will not let me go. After saying that, Xia Yan rubbed Obito's head and said goodbye to him, then he and Kakashi set off and continued towards the gate of Konoha. Looking at the backs of the two people going away, and recalling Kakashi's boastful look before he left, Obito was so angry that he bit his handkerchief. Damn, it was obviously me first. It's great to be a genin. Obviously, my strength is not much different from his, and this guy Kakashi, can't he have the same idea as me and want to worship the teacher as his teacher? Thinking that Kakashi could stay with Teacher Xia Yan for 24 hours, Obito felt a sense of crisis. He didn't know how much his strength would improve when he came back. Obito, who had been a little relaxed because of the ultimate shuriken, was nervous again. Alas, I wanted to play with Ashuma, it seems that I have to change my plan and find Kai for special training. Obito made up his mind and started to move towards the tavern, while silently saying in his heart, Kakashi, don't be complacent, I will definitely surprise you when you come back. Remember, I'm the #1 disciple of Teacher Xia Yan. At this time, Xia Yan and Kakashi also completed the registration of leaving the village of the gate guard of Konoha, and left Konoha together. As soon as he left the village, Kakashi quickly got into this state. Whether it was choosing the appropriate path according to the map and the on-site environment, or being alert to possible enemies at all times, he did it in a very good manner, not like a fledgling genin at all. This is probably the advantage of the ninja family tradition. Even if there is no guidance from the senior ninja, they have already mastered many tricks for executing tasks that are not recorded in books through the words and deeds of their family. The only thing that made Xia Yan speechless was that Kakashi seemed to have misunderstood this mission and looked nervous all the way. It seemed that 500 swordsmen might jump out of the bushes at any time and hack them to death. But it seemed that what Kakashi did was useless. They had a peaceful journey all the way, and not even a wild monster appeared. The journey of ordinary ninjas is so plain and boring. When the two came to an open space in the forest of the Land of Fire, Xia Yan saw that it was dark, so he suggested, "Let's stop here today, get a good night's sleep, and continue the journey tomorrow." Yes. Kakashi, who was on a mission, always looked concise. Then, without waiting for Xia Yan to give instructions, he said, "Then you take a rest first, I will be responsible for collecting food and setting up that camp." After saying that, he jumped onto a tree and began to observe the surrounding situation. Xia Yan opened his mouth and wanted to speak, but after thinking about it, he gave up. So Xia Yan sat on a big rock and watched Kakashi busying around with interest. I saw Kakashi sometimes went to the nearby area to collect various unprocessed fruits and mushrooms, sometimes used the tools in his back to build a hidden resting point on the tree, and sometimes used warrant bells to set up heavy early warning devices around the camp. When Kakashi finished everything, it was completely dark. Then he came to Xia Yan with the collected food and his own food pills and said, "According to the 3rd article of the Ninja Code, ninjas are forbidden to light fires when performing missions to avoid being discovered by the enemy, so we can only deal with it like this tonight. So Kakashi, what are you fighting wits and courage with?" Xia Yan looked at the crooked and cracked melons and fruits, as well as the unappetizing pills, and smiled helplessly. Seeing that Kakashi was about to start eating the big melon, Xia Yan quickly reached out to stop him. "Teacher, did I do something wrong?" Kakashi said in confusion, "I did everything according to the ninja code." "It's not wrong." Xia Yan said helplessly, "It's just that what is written in the book is a bit outdated after all." He stood up and smiled slightly. "Okay, then I will show you the camping method of the new era ninja." Although Kakashi felt a little indignant because Teacher Xia Yan questioned the ninja code, out of respect for Teacher Xia Yan, he still kept his composure and waited to watch his performance. Then Xia Yan looked around, and then came to a vacant lot. "This should be good," as he said. He took out a small box from his arms and opened it, took out a small capsule-shaped object from it and threw it to the ground in front of him. Bomb! After a large cloud of white smoke slowly dissipated, a white hemispherical house actually appeared in the original place. This incredible scene made Kakashi stunned. But this surprise or shock is not over yet. After Xia Yan opened the door of the house, the lights inside were bright and there was electricity. Then at Xia Yan's signal, Kakashi walked in tentatively. Then he was shocked to find that although it was not big, the living room, bedroom, toilet, bathroom, and kitchen were all available, and the decoration was very exquisite. Finally, he also found a pot of steaming curry with a rich aroma on the kitchen table. If he could not see the scene outside the window, he might have thought he was in a family-style luxury hotel. Is this what Teacher Xia Yan said, the camping method of the new era ninja? It is indeed completely different from before. But can this still be considered camping? Kakashi was lost in thought. He didn't even hear the question from Teacher Xia Yan who came in. "So Kakashi, do you want to eat first, take a shower first?" Chapter 197 Kakashi, food, times have changed. "Kakashi, do you want to eat first, take a shower first, or first?" After Xia Yan repeated the question again, Kakashi came back to his senses from the shock just now. When he heard about eating, Kakashi's eyes couldn't help but look at the pot of steaming curry, and the soldier pills in his hand suddenly felt smelly. When he heard about taking a shower, he also felt that his body was sticky, and it would be best if he could take a hot shower. And the last option that Teacher Xia Yan didn't finish talking about also made him a little curious. No. Kakashi, who was considering whether he wanted all of them, suddenly shuddered, and then a feeling of shame arose spontaneously. Kakashi, how could you be so depraved? Have you forgotten the contents of the ninja code? Kakashi blamed himself in his heart, and he was so easily confused by a little pleasure. This time he finally woke up, and then began to realize that there was something wrong with this room. Teacher, isn't this house too conspicuous? Kakashi asked subconsciously, and ran out of the house to take another look. Sure enough, This strange-shaped white building stood out in this primeval forest. And there was light from the window inside, so even in the dark, the existence of this house could be detected from a long distance. This was completely contrary to the style of a ninja. So when Xia Yan came out curiously with a plate of curry rice, Kakashi hesitated slightly, and finally said, "Teacher, according to Article 27 of the Ninja Code, ninjas must remain secret when performing missions and cannot be casually publicized." "Then your house." When Kakashi said this, he suddenly had a sense of déjà vu. Because when he had a conflict with his teammates in the previous Genin class, it was also a similar situation. Could it be that even teacher Xia Yan was no different from those guys who wantonly violated the ninja code? At this time, Xia Yan took a bite of curry rice, and then smiled leisurely. "Kakashi, don't be anxious. Have you forgotten what technique you have been learning recently?" As he said that, Xia Yan raised his hand and snapped his fingers lightly. Then the whole room began to blur and distort, gradually turning into a forest and bushes, and it was completely unrecognizable from its previous appearance. This is projection." Kakashi looked at the house in front of him that had already merged with the surrounding environment, and murmured in surprise. "Not bad." Xia Yan explained with a smile, "This house integrates the function of projection and a large capacity chakra capacitor, so it can use projection to simulate the surrounding environment for a long time for camouflage. In this way, Kakashi, you don't have to worry about the problem of concealment. In fact, if you want to be more concealed, this capsule house also has a basement version, but this one is enough for us now." As the last member to join the research team, Kakashi was still relatively unfamiliar with Xia Yan's endless use of projection, so when he saw this operation, he was inevitably shocked. "I didn't expect that projection magic could be used in this way. I was too stupid and naive to think of this. However, Mr. Xia Yan's tricks didn't seem to be over yet. I almost forgot." Xia Yan suddenly patted his forehead and said, then snapped his fingers. Then the house that had disappeared in the projection reappeared for a moment, and at the same time, rune spells spread out from it and spread around the house. After the rune spells completely covered the area with a radius of 20 meters around the house and formed a large-scale barrier array, all the spells and the house slowly disappeared again, as if nothing had happened just now. Seeing this, Xia Yan smiled with satisfaction and said, "Add this warning and defense a compound barrier, it should be foolproof." Kakashi, who was standing next to him, had a big mouth under his mask, and was shocked by Mr. Xia Yan's operation again. Because he really didn't expect that in addition to projection magic, this house actually integrated the function of barrier. He felt that even if the teacher suddenly asked the house to grow legs and take them on the road, he would not be surprised. Moreover, Kakashi could not help thinking of the early warning devices that he had just set up after working for most of the day. It seemed that he had done a lot of useless work again, but the most important thing was that Kakashi gradually became a little confused. Because what the teacher did was obviously contrary to what was written in the ninja code. But it was not difficult for Kakashi to see that the teacher's approach, while trying to make himself comfortable, was actually more effective than the methods recorded in the ninja code. If you can eat and sleep well while hiding, then the rules in the ninja code don't seem to be necessary to stick to. Is it really as Xia Yan said, that the things in the ninja code are outdated? No. Kakashi subconsciously denied this terrible idea. Because if this is really the case, then his persistence has become like water without a source and a tree without roots, and he doesn't know what is right at all. So he quickly found an excuse for this situation. Xia Yan teacher is special. He is proficient in sealing techniques, so he can do such a thing easily. Therefore, this is just a special case and cannot be used to negate the correctness of the ninja code. It's just like when teacher Xia Yan explained to him the goal of this mission along the way, the situation of Lady Summoned. Although she is a medical ninja, she often fights on the front line, and her strength is very strong. If you use her standards to require other medical ninjas, it would be too much to ask. But just when Kakashi finally convinced himself in his heart and breathed a sigh of relief, Xia Yan suddenly stacked him again. He was seen eating dinner while casually saying, "Kakashi, during this mission, please help me find out if there are any improvements to this house. Because this thing will become the main product of the tavern in the future, and it is very likely to be popular in the ninja world." Popular? Kakashi repeated blankly. Xia Yan nodded and said, "Yes, after all, don't you think this thing is quite convenient and has a good market prospect? And the rune formulas required for many parts of the house are relatively simple, which is just right for the factory that the tavern will build in cooperation with the school for large-scale production, and by the way, it will give students the opportunity to practice." This time Kakashi was completely speechless. Wow. It turns out that this thing can be popularized. Then won't all ninjas in the future be like the teacher, carrying a fully functional secret base with them? Doesn't this mean that a small part of the mission specifications in the ninja code will be greatly challenged, and teacher Xia Yan was still chaptering? And not only houses, weapons, food and even various means of transportation can be made into this capsule form. But considering the habits of ninjas, maybe it's better to make it in the form of a scroll, called the Universal Scroll, and maybe a separate company can be established to sell these things. What do you think, Kakashi? However, at this time, Kakashi was no longer in the mood to listen to teacher Xia Yan. Even after he stumbled to the dining table and saw a plate of steaming curry in front of him, Kakashi was still mumbling to himself. Kakashi, times have changed, perhaps, as the teacher said, with the progress of the times, even the ninja code that he regarded as a golden rule may become inappropriate. Thinking of this, Kakashi's heart suddenly felt a little empty. Because if that was the case, then the man who violated the rules of the ninja code at the beginning might not have done anything wrong. For a moment, Kakashi didn't know what he felt. However, he couldn't continue thinking. Perhaps it was because he subconsciously stopped his thoughts, or perhaps it was the sound from his stomach that brought him back to his senses. Gurgle. It seems that we should finish our meal first and then continue to discuss these issues. Kakashi, who was slightly embarrassed by the sound of his stomach, also temporarily put aside the difficult problem. Smelling the aroma of curry in front of him, Kakashi couldn't help but tighten the ration pills he had been holding in his hand. After struggling in his heart, he made a difficult choice. Without practice, there is no right to speak. In order to verify which of the teacher's methods and the methods in the ninja code are correct, Kakashi decided to go deep into the Tiger's Den and experience the method of teacher Xia Yan in person. The first step is to taste this curry rice. It smells so good. The next morning, outside the capsule house. In the morning light, the sound of humming and ha-ha and the sound of sharp weapons breaking through the wind continued to echo in the forest. Although it was not long after dawn, Kakashi had already gotten up early and was doing morning exercises. Because the teacher's bed was big and soft, Kakashi didn't sleep well all night, so he simply got up to practice. After waving the white fang short knife again and performing the Hatake-style swordsmanship, Kakashi sheathed the short knife and breathed softly. Although he tried to use practice to eliminate distracting thoughts, Kakashi still couldn't help thinking about what happened last night. Rules are not necessarily set in stone. When Kakashi realized this, he always felt at a loss. Because if this is really the case, then what should ninjas follow to act? Another question is, did teacher Xia Yan do it on purpose or accidentally? Did the teacher deliberately show the capsule house in front of him, actually admonishing him in a roundabout way? Could it be, did he really do something wrong? At this moment, Kakashi couldn't help but think that he might have graduated too early. Because he found that in addition to the knowledge of ninjutsu, there were many things he didn't quite understand. Kakashi, who couldn't get the answers to these questions for the time being, had to continue to practice hard, trying to let these doubts leave his body with sweat. Thank you for the 1100 rewards from the book Friend Growing Up Healthy. Chapter 198 Special Class. At this time, in the capsule house, Xia Yan also got up and stretched his body, feeling particularly refreshed. Because this was the first time in more than half a year that he didn't need to receive memories from the three little ones when he slept. Xia Yan almost forgot that when the quality of sleep is good, people will not remember the dreams they have had when they wake up. However, Xia Yan could only smile helplessly. After all, he couldn't give up the great help brought to him by the three little ones for the quality of sleep. However, it might be a good topic to enhance the brain's endurance or soul strength through various means. Xia Yan thought about this problem while washing up quickly. He saw that Kakashi was not in the room, and heard a faint sound coming from outside, so he opened the door and walked out. Fire style. Great fireball technique. As soon as he went out, Xia Yan saw Kakashi not far away quickly forming seals with his hands, then took a deep breath and his chest bulged, and then he suddenly spit out a huge fireball, flying forward with a roar. Under Xia Yan's slightly raised eyebrow, the fireball hit a thick tree, and then penetrated through it without causing any damage. Pa 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 pa. Seeing Kakashi stop moving, Xia Yan clapped his hands and walked over. Kakashi, I didn't expect you to practice the projection technique to this level so quickly. It's almost the same as Obito's fireball projection technique. Xia Yan smiled and complained in his heart. It seems that even without the Sharingan, it still can't stop Kakashi from copying other people's ninjutsu. Is this the strength of the original copy ninja? Although Kakashi received praise from teacher Xia Yan, he still reacted mediocrely, as if he was still not satisfied with his previous technique. Teacher, you are too kind. In fact, the projection and sound of the fireball projection technique just now are not completely synchronized. Kakashi shook his head slightly. Just like people who know how to cook can better taste the quality of food. After learning the projection technique, Kakashi realized how flawed Obito's fireball projection technique was at the beginning, and also realized how inexperienced he was at the beginning. Because the size, temperature, and surrounding environment of the fireball will affect the sound of the fireball. Therefore, even if the temperature is ignored, experienced ninjas can tell the authenticity of the fireball by just listening to the sound. Therefore, being praised by teacher Xia Yan for being on par with Obito is not something that Kakashi, who strives for perfection, is happy about. It's really strict. Xia Yan smiled and said, but there is nothing we can do about it. After all, the projection and sound of the projection technique are actually produced separately, which are two different uses of chakra. The projection is formed by deforming the clone technique, and the sound is the conversion of chakra into sound waves and released. It takes a long time to practice to synchronize them completely without flaws. Speaking of the idea of the projection technique to produce sound, we still have to thank Oro Kimura. Because in the original work, there are many sound ninjas under his command who use sound to fight. Xia Yan can no longer remember the name of one of them, but he knows that he can use the device in his arm to convert chakra into high-pressure airflow and ultrasonic waves and release them to attack the enemy. Xia Yan also borrowed this idea to make the projection technique evolve from the silent film mirror to the sound film mirror. However, because of this, just like Xia Yan's video in his previous life, the sound and the image are not actually a whole, so there are often various situations where the sound and the image are not synchronized. Xia Yan relied on years of experience and the assistance of the intelligent brain to easily achieve flawlessness. But for his students, this may be the biggest difficulty in practicing projection. As a genius, Kakashi naturally understood the key points quickly, so he asked Xia Yan about the sound problem. What made Xia Yan even more impressed was that Kakashi was even able to draw inferences from one example. After he explained it briefly, he realized that the chakra technique of making sound also contained the possibility of being used in combat. Xia Yan also wanted to see what Kakashi, who would invent Chidori sooner or later, could do, so he also briefly talked about the use of sound by those sound ninjas as inspiration. Perhaps soon, the ninja sword version of the air-slashing wave will be born from Kakashi's hands. After finishing the teaching of the chakra conversion sound, Xia Yan thought of another question and said, by the way, I asked you to design your own projection technique before. Kakashi, have you finished it? Kakashi shook his head slightly. Teacher, not yet. Maybe I don't have anything special that I want to achieve with the projection technique. But I think that it's good enough to imitate other people's projection techniques. The copy ninja appeared again. Xia Yan complained in his heart, and at the same time he was a little speechless. After all, this idea of fleecing everyone was one of the purposes of Xia Yan's hard work in teaching everyone the projection technique. Why can Kakashi fleece everyone like himself without doing anything? Is this the unspoken tacit understanding between the two generations of copy ninjas? Xia Yan couldn't help but take a breath of cold air, feeling that this boy was so terrifying, and he must not let him continue like this. You should stop thinking about copying at such a young age, and develop something new for me to learn from. Since Kakashi hasn't found the direction of his destiny projection technique, I'll decide one for him. After thinking about it for a while, Xia Yan said to Kakashi, letting you design your own projection technique is actually mainly to let you initially clarify your own ninja way. Because projection technique can use a very low-cost way to reflect everyone's ideas into reality. Obito's fake fireball, Ashuma's coolness, Home's virtual and real illusion, Ring's Cupid, Ebisu's mosaic, are all part of the dream they want to achieve. And you, Kakashi, who haven't found your own innate projection technique, actually proves that you are still confused in your heart. Seeing that Kakashi was hit by his words and his eyes widened, Xia Yan smiled slightly and changed the subject. Actually, it doesn't matter. After all, the ninja way is something worth searching for throughout your life. But for the sake of subsequent courses and research tests, Kakashi, you'd better choose a direction to study first. It just so happens that I have an interesting use of projection technique that is very suitable for you. Would you like to try it? Kakashi, who was still stunned by the teacher's words just now, finally came back to his senses. After hesitating for a while, he said, Teacher, can you let me see how you use it? Of course, no problem. Xia Yan smiled, and then cast his eyes on the white fang short knife behind Kakashi, saying, "But it may be better to use your knife to demonstrate the effect." Kakashi had no objection to this, and handed the short knife to Xia Yan very happily. Then the two of them slightly distanced themselves. Xia Yan's right index finger was placed on the back of the knife, as if he was holding a scalpel. He said in a more serious tone than usual, "Kakashi, when you see me make a move later, remember not to move your body, because I am not sure that I can fully control this move, so if you move randomly, you'll die." Seeing that the teacher was so cautious, Kakashi also swallowed nervously. Although he wanted to ask the teacher why he had to use him as a target. There were so many trees around, maybe it was because if you don't experience this move yourself, you can't master the key points. Thinking like this, Kakashi became more and more looking forward to his teacher's move, and asked, "Then teacher, what is the name of this move?" Xia Yan tilted his head slightly and said, "Well, actually, I didn't give this move a special name, but if I really want to say, the name of this move is probably, Nine-Headed Dragon Flash." Thank you Liu Haha for the 100 reward. Chapter 199 Teaching and Arrival. Nine-Headed Dragon Flash. Kakashi repeated subconsciously, feeling that the name of this move was quite powerful. But just when he was about to ask about the details of this move, he saw Xia Yan teacher smiled slightly and suddenly disappeared. Immediately afterwards, Kakashi inexplicably felt a chill rushing up from his tailbone, reminding him of the approaching danger. The next moment, he saw Xia Yan teacher suddenly appear in front of him, and smiled and raised the short sword. The ninja instinct made Kakashi subconsciously think of dodging or defending, but he was shocked to find that he seemed to be unable to dodge or defend at all. Because in an instant, he saw that the figure of the teacher in front of him seemed to be superimposed with several layers of phantoms, and at the same time made various attacking movements, attacking him from different angles. Tangzu, Kasei slash, reverse Kasei, left stab, left cut, right cut, against the wind, stab sword. 9 basic kendo moves were used at the same time in an instant, leaving no room for Kakashi to dodge or defend. At the moment when Kakashi's mind went blank, 9 blade lights flashed in front of him. In the blink of an eye, Xia Yan had already arrived not far behind Kakashi, and then the hem of his white coat slowly fell. Ding! After hearing the sound of the short knife being sheathed from behind, Kakashi came back to his senses, and his breathing, which had subconsciously stopped, began to work again. He even felt a little weak in his legs, but he was actually holding back to not fall to the ground. The teacher's move just now was really too realistic, and even mixed with a little murderous aura, so at that moment, he thought the teacher was really going to chop him. This was naturally a bit difficult for Kakashi, who was just starting out and had not really fought in actual combat. What made him even more palpitating was that at the moment when the blade light flashed, he even felt that he really saw the phantom of a 9-headed evil dragon behind teacher Xia Yan. Is this the murderous aura that the man once said that only experienced ninjas can produce? How many people did the teacher kill to condense such murderous aura? Kakashi didn't dare to think about it. After he felt a little strength in his legs and feet, he slowly turned around and wanted to ask the teacher about the details of this move. Who knew that as soon as he turned around, his body couldn't help but freeze again. Because he actually saw that there was still a shadow of a 9-headed evil dragon behind that teacher, waving its fangs and claws. Why? Did he do something wrong to make the teacher so angry that he couldn't even take back his murderous aura? Xia Yan, who was patiently waiting for Kakashi to recover, saw Kakashi looking at his back in astonishment, and suddenly reacted and said, "Oh, I forgot to turn off the special effects." As he said that, the shadow of the 9-headed evil dragon behind him turned into a bubble and disappeared. Kakashi paused for more than 10 seconds in a daze, and then he reacted. Wow! It turns out that it was all special effects. Kakashi, who always had no expression, couldn't help but look at Xia Yan speechlessly. Ahem. Xia Yan also felt that he seemed to have messed up his show-off this time. He coughed twice to ease the embarrassment and said, "The 9-headed dragon projection of the end is just the icing on the cake. The key to this move is still the front. Do you understand, Kakashi?" "Teacher, are you sure this is not superfluous?" Kakashi complained in his heart, but after hearing the teacher's question, he pondered for a moment and then said, "Is it that at the moment of swinging the sword, other attack angles are used to confuse the enemy, so that the opponent does not know how to dodge and defend, to cover the real blow?" Xia Yan smiled and nodded. In simple terms, that's it. Of course there are many other tricks. For example, in addition to covering the real blow, it can be 2 hits, 3 hits. Seeing the confusion on Kakashi's face, Xia Yan continued to explain. Kakashi, you also know that in regular close combat, speed is basically the key factor affecting victory or defeat. Because with the physique of ordinary ninjas, as long as they get the first chance to hit the opponent with a sword, the outcome can basically be determined. So ninjas who specialize in this will study how to use chakra to swing the sword faster. In the pursuit of speed, one idea is to try to attack in different directions in a short period of time, so that the enemy has no way to resist. The ultimate in this direction is the ability to perform 9 basic attacks in an instant, launching a lightning-fast continuous slash from 9 directions, 9-headed dragon flash. 9 slashes in an instant, and 9 different attacks. Kakashi was stunned by the realm described by teacher Xia Yan. Although he knew that sword masters could use the burst of chakra to swing several swords in a short period of time, the realm described by the teacher was still a little unbelievable to him. I'm afraid that even that man can't do what the teacher said. Then Kakashi heard teacher Xia Yan say, the idea of my move is to use projection to simulate some of the effects of the realm. Although it is far inferior in destructive power, it is also difficult to resist to a certain extent. So it is essentially a low-profile version of the completed 9-headed dragon flash. But even if it is a low-profile version, the difficulty of this move is actually not low. Because it requires full-speed slashing in close combat while using projection to create projections in other attack directions. If either is not mastered well, this move will not work. In terms of learning difficulty, it is much higher than the direction that other students in the research group are currently learning. So whether to learn this move depends on you, Kakashi. Kakashi was also thinking seriously. Hatake-style swordsmanship has always been simple and direct, emphasizing one-shot killing, without too many fancy moves. So the teacher's move was too showy and somewhat incompatible with what he learned. However, because of those characteristics of Hatake-style swordsmanship, in order to achieve the greatest effect, the user needs to have extreme speed, skills and reaction. However, due to his age, he lacked physical fitness. It was okay for him to bully ninja school students or new genin, but if he met an adult ninja, he would probably be at a disadvantage due to the physical difference. Therefore, although this low-profile version of the 9-headed dragon flash was fancy, it was also a good supplement for him. Because it allowed him to have the possibility of fighting against the enemy even if his strength and speed were not as good as the enemy. So after thinking about it, Kakashi bowed slightly to Xia Yan and said, Teacher Xia Yan, please teach me this move. Xia Yan smiled slightly, threw the white fang short knife back and said, of course there is no problem. It's still early now, I will teach you the basics of the 9-headed dragon flash. So Xia Yan began to explain the key points of this low-profile version of the 9-headed dragon flash to Kakashi in detail, and then guided Kakashi to practice. 3 more days passed like this. For 3 days, Xia Yan did not rush to travel desperately, but guided Kakashi's training while traveling at a normal speed. So today, they finally arrived at their destination, the Tancho street lined with gambling houses. Chapter 200 Ninja Dog. As soon as they entered the street, Kakashi, who was originally concentrating on studying the 9-headed dragon flash, also temporarily entered the task state. He looked up and asked Xia Yan, Teacher, how are we going to find summons map? Xia Yan searched around for summons figure that might appear at any time, and casually said, well, normally, we should go to the hotel, tavern or gambling house to inquire about summons whereabouts. But before that, we can try a trickier method. As he said, Xia Yan turned his head and said to Kakashi, I heard that your Hatake clan has signed a summoning contract with a group of ninja dogs for generations. Can you now summon a ninja dog with a particularly sensitive sense of smell? Kakashi quickly understood teacher Xia Yan's idea and naturally did not object. In order to avoid attracting attention, the two came to a remote alley. Then Kakashi bit his thumb and quickly used the summoning technique to summon a pug dog. You must be teacher Xia Yan. I have only heard about you from Kakashi before. As soon as the seemingly old pug came out, it greeted Xia Yan politely. Thank you very much for your guidance recently, Kakashi. No. Xia Yan smiled, and at the same time felt that the ninja dog in front of him was very similar to Parga who appeared in the original work, so he asked again. May I ask your name? Ben. The pug said. Kakashi usually calls me Uncle Ben, but you can just call me Ben. Xia Yan suppressed the urge to ask Ben if his wife's name was May, and said, Ben, we are going to find someone on this street now, can you help us? It's my honor, teacher Xia Yan, but I need the objects that the other person has touched to distinguish the other person's smell. Ben said respectfully. Yes, Xia Yan asked Kakashi to summon the ninja dog, naturally wanting to use its sensitive nose to find Summon's whereabouts. For this reason, he asked teacher Mito to provide some of Summon's things as smell samples before he set off. However, he originally planned to rent a ninja dog from the Inuzuka clan and then signed a temporary summoning contract to realize this plan. But since Kakashi applied to join this mission, Xia Yan saved some effort. After getting Ben's affirmative answer, Xia Yan took out a scroll from his arms, which contained Summon's old things given by Mito teacher. He spread out the scroll, and heard a bang of white smoke, and a small piece of soft cloth appeared in his hand. Is it a handkerchief? Xia Yan frowned slightly. Because of the tight time and to avoid the smell from dissipating too much, he did not open the scroll to check the contents. He didn't expect it to be just a handkerchief. In this way, there might not be too much Summon's smell left on it. But just when he spread out the handkerchief to let Ben smell it, he found something wrong. Why is this handkerchief triangular? And it seems to have 2 layers. Xia Yan waved the handkerchief with lace edges in his hand, which seemed too fancy, and fell into deep thought. Kakashi looked strange, but he couldn't help but said, "Teacher, why do I feel that what you have in your hand is not a handkerchief?" But, no, this is a handkerchief, but the shape and style are a bit strange. Xia Yan read expressionlessly. But, Kakashi had objections, but after being looked at by the teacher with a slightly dangerous look, he decided not to investigate further. Xia Yan wiped his sweat when he saw this, with his empty hand. Alas, Teacher Mito, no need to think, this must be the teacher's back taste again. Although I seem to have said that I needed Summon's personal belongings at the beginning, but this is too personal. If Summon finds out, I will die. Is it fun to tease students like this? Well, it is indeed interesting for a teacher. After shaking his head and sighing, Xia Yan comforted himself in his heart that at least this handkerchief should be effective. It is better to find Summon quickly, and then quickly destroy this thing and treat it as a black history. So Xia Yan decided to follow that previous plan, squatted down and gave Ben a few sniffs of the handkerchief. "How is it? Did you remember the smell?" Xia Yan asked. Ben smacked his lips and savored it for a while and said, "No problem, Teacher Xia Yan, I have remembered this fresh scent like the sea breeze. There is indeed the smell of the other person on this street. Give me some time, I should be able to find her." So Ben started to work, walking around and sniffing, looking for Summon's smell. Xia Yan and Kakashi followed it, walking and stopping on the street. Not long after, Ben seemed to have gained something. Although it was almost covered, there is her smell on the dry vomit under the telephone pole. It should be a day ago, but just when Ben wanted to continue searching, its eyes suddenly enlarged. Why is the other person's smell suddenly stronger? Is this vomit getting more fragrant as time goes by? No, she is approaching. After hearing Ben's conclusion, Xia Yan and Kakashi immediately looked around. Soon, a noisy shout and footsteps came from one end of the street, attracting the attention of the two. A beautiful blonde was being chased by a group of evil guys, and she was running towards them. "Teacher, isn't that?" Kakashi's heart jumped when he saw the figure of the beautiful blonde, because it was obviously the legendary Summoned. Xia Yan raised his hand to interrupt Kakashi and said, "Don't worry, let's see what happens first." Kakashi looked at the handkerchief still in Xia Yan's raised hand, and didn't know how to complain for a while. However, he also obeyed Xia Yan's order, just picked up Ben and moved to the edge of the street. Soon, Summoned ran past them. Because of the Konoha forehead protectors of the two, she took a special look at the two. Then her eyes inadvertently stayed on the handkerchief in Xia Yan's hand. The world is really going downhill. Why is this Konoha ninja holding a pair of panties in broad daylight? Did Jiraiya go back to the village and led the other ninjas astray? More importantly, why did that pair of panties look familiar? Unfortunately, Summoned didn't think about it because she was still being hunted. She just thought that the handsome white-haired boy in front of her was a pervert with good taste, and then continued to run forward. "Hurry up, we must catch her today." "That's right. The boss said that there will be a lot of money if you catch her." "Damn it, didn't they say that people with big breasts can't run fast?" Then the group of fierce guys also passed by the two of them, cursing. Hearing their words, Kakashi subconsciously reached out to the ninja tool bag, but was stopped by Teacher Xia Yan. So he had to suppress his impulse and wait for all those people to run past. "Teacher, why don't we stop these bad guys from attacking Lady Summoned?" "Because I'm afraid the real bad guy is our Lady Summoned who owes money and doesn't pay it back." Xia Yan complained in his heart, but on the surface he said lightly, It's okay, let the shuriken fly for a while. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.